Welcome to another exciting episode on DC What If. Today, we're exploring a captivating tale called What If Superman Joined the Avengers Instead of Thor. Before we begin, if you enjoy our content, please support us by liking this video and subscribing to our channel. It helps more than you know. And now, the story awaits. Chapter 1, The Man of Tomorrow. Clark Kent stood on the roof of the Daily Planet building, tie fluttering in the breeze as he scanned Metropolis with his superhuman senses. Something was off tonight. A pattern of unusual robberies had been hitting tech companies across the city. Not your everyday smash-and-grab jobs, these thieves wanted specific components, the kind of cutting-edge stuff that shouldn't exist on Earth yet. His superhearing picked up a police scanner report, another break-in at LexCorp's R&D facility. Clark glanced at his watch. Perry was expecting that city council corruption piece on his desk tomorrow, but that could wait. He loosened his tie, unbuttoned his shirt to reveal the bold S symbol beneath, and launched himself skyward. The rush of air against his face never got old. 3 seconds later, Superman descended toward LexCorp Tower, using his X-ray vision to assess the situation. 6 armed men wearing tactical gear were loading equipment into a van in the underground parking garage. Their weapons weren't standard issue, they pulsed with an eerie blue energy he'd never seen before. Superman landed silently behind them. "Gentlemen, I believe you forgot to check those items out at the front desk." The men spun around, faces masked but eyes wide with panic. One shouted, "It's him. Use the new toys." They opened fire. Superman had expected bullets, maybe even kryptonite if they were well funded. What he hadn't expected was weapons that fired energy similar to the Phantom Zone projector. The beams distorted space around him, creating pockets of altered gravity that even he found hard to navigate. What the hell? Superman dodged sideways, feeling a strange pull as one of the beams grazed his cape. These weren't Earth weapons. He'd bet his life on it. The leader barked orders, "Keep him busy. Protocol Chimera is still downloading." Superman pushed through the gravitational distortion, grabbed 2 of the weapons, and crushed them in his hands. "Where did you get this tech?" No answer came, just more fire. "Fine." Superman inhaled deeply and released a concentrated blast of freeze breath, encasing 3 of the men in ice up to their necks. The remaining gunmen scrambled for the van. The leader jammed a thumb drive into his tactical vest. "Drive. Now." Superman slammed his palm against the van's hood, crumpling the engine block. "Nobody's driving anywhere." The leader drew something from his pocket, a small green shard that made Superman's skin crawl before it even got close. "Kryptonite. Of course. Back off, alien, or find out how much this little rock hurts." Superman's vision blurred at the edges. His veins felt like they were filling with fire. He'd been careless, overconfident. A voice crackled over the leader's comm, "Extraction in 10. Hold position." Superman forced himself to focus through the pain. He couldn't let them escape with whatever they'd stolen. With the last of his strength, he slammed his fist into the concrete floor, creating a shockwave that knocked the men off their feet. The kryptonite skittered across the garage. Fighting through nausea, Superman lunged for the leader, ripping the thumb drive from his vest. The man struggled, but even weakened, Superman overpowered him easily. "Who are you working for?" The garage ceiling exploded inward. Something large and mechanical descended, a transport craft unlike anything on Earth. Superman tried to intercept it, but another kryptonite shard shot from the craft's underside, driving him to his knees. As the craft extracted the men and their stolen tech, Superman used his heat vision to melt the concrete floor beneath the fallen kryptonite, encasing it safely out of reach. His strength returned just enough to leap upward, grabbing onto the craft's landing gear as it ascended. The ship accelerated to supersonic speeds, trying to shake him. Superman held tight, climbing up toward the hull. He punched through the metal exterior, tearing into the ship's mechanics. The craft lurched, systems failing, and began a controlled descent toward the outskirts of Metropolis. Inside, the thieves panicked. "He's breaking through." Superman ripped away more plating, exposing the cargo hold where the men huddled around their stolen tech. Last chance to surrender. The leader pressed a button on his wrist. Contingency activated. A pulse of energy erupted from the stolen tech, not targeting Superman but the other equipment in the hold. Everything electronic began to glow with the same eerie blue energy as their weapons. Superman recognized the imminent explosion and made a split-second decision. He grabbed the thieves, punched through the opposite side of the craft, and flew them all to safety seconds before the ship detonated in midair. The explosion wasn't normal, it collapsed in on itself, creating a miniature gravity well that pulled debris inward before vanishing with a thunderclap. Superman deposited the thieves in front of arriving police units, keeping the leader separate. "What was that? What were you stealing?" The man laughed despite his situation. "You think you're the only visitor this planet has had? You're not special anymore, Superman." Before Superman could respond, a black SUV pulled up. Men in suits emerged, flashing government badges to the Metropolis PD. Their leader approached, a tall black man with an eye patch and a presence that commanded attention. "I'll take it from here, Superman." Superman crossed his arms. "And you are?" "Nick Fury, Director of S.H.I.E.L.D." He nodded toward the thieves. "These men are part of an ongoing investigation. They've been stealing Chitauri technology salvaged after the Battle of New York." "Chitauri?" Fury's expression remained neutral. "An alien race that attacked New York 6 months ago. While you were handling that tsunami in Japan, the world almost ended." He gestured to his agents. "Take them." Superman frowned. "I'm not handing them over until I know what's going on. That explosion wasn't like anything I've seen before. That's exactly why we need to talk." Fury handed him a card. "Alone." The S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier hovered above the Atlantic, cloaked from radar and visible detection. Superman had followed Fury's coordinates, impressed despite himself. Human technology had advanced significantly during his years of keeping to smaller-scale heroics. "Quite the operation you're running," Superman said as Fury led him through the command center. Agents turned to stare, some with awe, others with visible concern. "But I still don't understand why I'm here." Fury brought him to a private conference room where surveillance footage played on multiple screens, Superman saving a plane in Metropolis, stopping a bridge collapse in Gotham, diverting a hurricane from Florida. Years of his heroics compiled in a neat digital package. "You've been busy," Fury said. "Solo act. Handling disasters, stopping criminals. The Boy Scout routine. I help where I can. And we appreciate it. But things are changing." Fury brought up footage of the New York attack, massive alien leviathans emerging from a portal above Stark Tower, chaos in the streets. "The universe just got a whole lot bigger, and not everyone out there is friendly." Superman watched the footage with a deepening frown. "Why am I just hearing about this now? You tell me." "We tried to contact you during the invasion. You were off-grid." Superman remembered, he'd been in the Fortress of Solitude, studying Kryptonian archives about other worlds. The isolation chamber blocked all signals. A day of research had cost him the chance to help during Earth's greatest crisis. "So what do you want from me, Director?" "I'm putting together a team. People with unique abilities." Fury swiped through profiles on a holographic display. Tony Stark, genius billionaire with a weaponized suit of armor. Steve Rogers, super soldier from World War II recently found frozen but alive. Bruce Banner, brilliant scientist who transforms into an unstoppable force when angry. 2 master assassins with skills beyond ordinary humans. Superman raised an eyebrow. "Quite the collection. We call it the Avengers Initiative. Earth's defense against threats too big for conventional forces." Fury looked at him directly. Originally, I was tracking another powerful being, an Asgardian named Thor. But he's returned to his world, and frankly, your abilities make him look like a weekend warrior. I'm not interested in military service, Director. This isn't about taking orders. It's about having backup when the next alien armada comes calling. Fury pointed to the footage of the Chitauri. You're strong, Superman. Maybe the strongest being on this planet. But even you can't be everywhere at once. Superman considered this. He'd always worked alone, partly to protect his identity, partly because few could keep up with him. But these Chitauri weapons showing up in Metropolis proved Fury right. The universe was getting smaller, more dangerous. What would this arrangement look like? You maintain your independence, but when world-ending threats emerge, you work with the team. Share intelligence. Coordinate response. Fury handed him a folder. We also provide resources. Information about these new threats. Technology to counter them. A network of allies. Superman flipped through the folder, stopping at a photo of a red-haired woman in a black tactical suit. Who's she? Natasha Romanoff. Codename Black Widow. She'll be your liaison, help you integrate with the team. And my identity? Remains your business, unless you decide otherwise. Fury leaned against the table. Look, I don't need to know who you are under that cape. I just need to know Earth can count on you when it matters most. Superman closed the folder. I'll consider it. Don't take too long. Those weapons you saw tonight? They're just the beginning. Clark Kent sat at his desk in the Daily Planet bullpen, staring at his half-written article. Perry had been surprisingly understanding about the missed deadline, but Clark's thoughts weren't on city council corruption. They were on Fury's offer. Earth to Kent. You planning to finish that piece or wait for the corruption to solve itself? Lois Lane dropped into the chair beside his desk, coffee in hand. As always, she looked simultaneously exhausted and energized, her dark hair pulled back in a hasty ponytail. Sorry, just distracted. Thinking about that weird explosion at LexCorp? Because I've got sources saying it wasn't just a regular break-in. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. Word is the thieves had tech that matched the New York alien invasion. Superman stopped them, but government spooks swooped in and took over. Clark adjusted his glasses. How do you always know these things? I'm a reporter, Clark. It's literally my job. She sipped her coffee, studying him. You know, for someone who's always chasing Superman stories, you missed a big one last night. I was, following up on the corruption piece. She didn't sound convinced. Anyway, Perry wants to see you. Sounded important. Clark found Perry White staring out his office window at the Metropolis skyline, specifically at the distant crater where Superman had stopped the alien craft. You wanted to see me, Chief? Perry turned, cigar clenched between his teeth. Kent. Good. Sit down. He shuffled through papers on his desk. How do you feel about New York? Clark blinked. It's a nice city. Glad you think so. You're moving there. What? Why? Perry slapped down a memo. Daily Planet's expanding coverage of superhuman events after that New York disaster. We need someone embedded there to cover these Avengers everyone's talking about. Your Superman coverage has been solid, so you're my pick. But my connections are here in Metropolis, my apartment, all handled. Companies covering relocation. You'll work from the New York bureau. Perry's expression softened slightly. Look, Kent, this is a promotion. Higher pay, bigger stories. And between us, something tells me Superman might be spending more time in New York soon too. Clark stared at him. What makes you say that? Perry tapped his computer screen, showing a blurry photo of Superman speaking with a man on a SHIELD transport. Source at the harbor snapped this last night. That's Nick Fury, the the spy running this Avengers circus. If he's talking to Superman, something big is brewing. Clark felt a chill. Someone had photographed his meeting with Fury. His two worlds were colliding faster than he'd anticipated. When would I start? Next week. Lane's going too. Lois? Her idea, actually. Said, and I quote, "If Kent's chasing Superman to New York, I'm chasing the real story behind these Avengers." Perry shrugged. You two work well together. Don't screw it up. Clark left Perry's office in a daze, nearly bumping into Lois at the coffee machine. So, she said, New York roomies. Hope you don't snore, Smallville. We're not, relax, separate apartments. But we are working this Avengers beat together. She studied him over her mug. You don't seem thrilled. Clark forced a smile. No, it's great. Just unexpected. Like Superman suddenly cozying up to shadowy government agencies. She raised an eyebrow. What do you think that's about? Maybe he realized he can't do everything alone. Lois considered this. That would be a story, Superman admitting he has limits. She grabbed her bag. Anyway, I'm heading out early. Apartment hunting in New York this weekend. Try to finish that corruption piece before we move, will you? As she walked away, Clark's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, decision time. Stark Tower, tomorrow, 3 p.m. NF, Clark sighed. Apparently, his double life was about to get even more complicated. Tony Stark didn't look up from his holographic schematics when Superman landed on the tower's balcony. You're early, Spandex. Meeting's not for another 20 minutes. Superman entered through the sliding door Jarvis opened automatically. I thought it would be polite to introduce myself before the others arrive. S.H.I.E.L.D. briefed me. Super strength, flight, heat vision, freezy breath, blah blah blah. Tony finally looked up, eyes narrowing. What they couldn't tell me is why you're suddenly interested in team sports when you've been solo since you appeared. The world's changing. No, something spooked you. Tony circled him, openly analyzing his suit. The alien tech hitting the black market? The kryptonite showing up in more places? Or maybe you're just lonely. Hard to date when you can hear everyone's heartbeat within 10 miles. Superman maintained his composure. You've done your research. I do my homework when potentially unstoppable aliens want to join the team. Tony stopped in front of him. Here's my question, who are you when you're not wearing the cape? Because I've got a rule about working with people who keep their faces hidden. Says the man who wears a full metal helmet. Different. Everyone knows I'm Iron Man. Tony tapped his arc reactor. Full disclosure. My identity protects people I care about. It also means we can't fully trust you. Tony stepped closer. How do we know you don't have some alien agenda? Maybe you're playing nice until your Kryptonian buddies show up. Superman's jaw tightened. I was raised in Kansas, Stark. Earth is my home. Kansas? Tony's eyes lit with sudden interest. Now that's a detail S.H.I.E.L.D. didn't have. Before Superman could respond, the elevator doors opened. Steve Rogers stepped out, wearing civilian clothes but carrying his shield on his back. He hesitated upon seeing Superman, then approached with an extended hand. Captain Steve Rogers. Honor to meet you, Superman. Superman shook his hand. Likewise, Captain. I've read about your service. Hope the history books were kind. Steve's grip was firm, his gaze direct. Fury says you might be joining us. I'm considering it. Tony snorted. He's being coy about who's under the cape. Steve glanced between them. Some of us understand the need for a secret identity, Stark. Thank you, Superman said. Don't thank me yet. Steve's expression remained serious. I do have concerns about your methods. You answer to no one, operate without oversight. In my experience, that eventually leads to trouble, no matter how good your intentions. Before Superman could respond, the elevator opened again. Bruce Banner entered, looking uncomfortable in a wrinkled suit. Behind him came Natasha Romanoff and a man Superman recognized from the files as Clint Barton. Looks like the party started without us, Natasha said, assessing Superman with a calculating gaze. Bruce approached cautiously. So you're the Man of Steel. Your cellular density must be remarkable to withstand the forces your body endures during flight. Dr. Banner, Superman nodded. Your work on gamma radiation was groundbreaking, before your accident. Bruce gave a tight smile. That's a polite way of putting it. Fury was the last to arrive, striding in like he owned the place despite Tony's visible annoyance. Good, you're all here. Let's get to it. He pulled up holographic displays showing the recent tech thefts. We're seeing a pattern of coordinated attacks on facilities housing alien technology. Last night's incident in Metropolis confirms our suspicion, someone is building something big. Images appeared of the recovered weapons from Metropolis. These modified Chitauri weapons were designed specifically to counter Superman. They generate localized gravity distortions similar to what we believe exists in something called the Phantom Zone. Superman stepped forward. How would Earth criminals know about the Phantom Zone? That's the million-dollar question, Fury replied. Our working theory is they're being supplied by someone with advanced knowledge of Kryptonian physiology. Another Kryptonian? Steve asked. Superman shook his head. Impossible. I'm the last. You sure about that, Boy Scout? Tony challenged. Because someone knew exactly how to hurt you. Natasha interrupted. The weapons have components we've never seen before, but the design architecture resembles LexCorp technology. Lex Luthor, Superman's expression darkened. He's been obsessed with me for years, collecting data on my abilities. And he's recently been in contact with a scientist named Hank Pym, Fury added, bringing up a new file. Pym was developing technology that could change the size and mass of objects. He went off-grid 6 months ago. So we've got a genius billionaire with a Superman complex working with a size-changing scientist, Clint summarized. Sounds like a party. There's more. Fury displayed satellite images of a facility in the Arctic. We detected energy signatures matching both Chitauri technology and Kryptonian readings at this location. Superman stared at the image. That's 50 miles from my Fortress of Solitude. You're what now? Tony interrupted. A Kryptonian structure where I store technology from my homeworld. You have an alien fortress and never thought to mention it. Tony looked incredulous. It's private, Superman countered. And secure. Evidently not secure enough, Fury said. Because someone's been studying it from a distance. We believe they're reverse engineering your technology. The room fell silent as implications set in. Superman felt a growing sense of dread. If Luthor had access to both Chitauri and Kryptonian technology. This is why I wanted you with us, Fury continued. Whatever they're building, it's designed to take you down first. After that, the rest of the Avengers wouldn't stand a chance against combined alien tech. So what's the play? Steve asked, already shifting into tactical mode. Reconnaissance first, Fury replied. We need to confirm Luthor's involvement before making accusations against one of the world's most powerful CEOs. I'll go to the Arctic facility, Superman volunteered. Not alone, Steve countered. We do this as a team or not at all. Cap's right, Tony agreed. My suits can handle Arctic conditions, and I can analyze the tech on site. Romanoff and Barton will approach from the ground, Fury continued. Banner stays on the carrier as our science advisor unless we need a code green. Bruce looked relieved. The other guy and freezing temperatures don't mix well anyway. Superman looked around at these humans preparing to face unknown alien dangers. They were either very brave or very foolish. Probably both. When do we start? He asked. Fury checked his watch. Wheels up in 30. Hope you've made your decision, Superman. The others watched him expectantly. Superman thought about Perry's reassignment, about the increasing alien presence on Earth, about his years of solitary heroism. I'm in. The Arctic wind howled across the frozen landscape as Superman flew ahead of the Quinjet. In his ear, Tony Stark's voice crackled through the comms. Temperature dropping below tolerable levels for the jet. We'll need to land 2 miles out and proceed on foot. Romanoff and I are in position at the North Ridge, Clint reported. No external guards visible, but we've got sensor arrays disguised as weather equipment. Superman scanned the facility with his vision powers. 3 levels underground. Lead lined in sections, but I can make out approximately 20 personnel. Heavy machinery in the central chamber. They're building something big. Any chance you can be more specific than something big? Tony asked. Superman focused harder. The lead shielding isn't consistent. I see what looks like a circular platform with Chitauri power cells. Some kind of portal device, maybe. A portal? Steve's voice tensed. Like New York? Similar principle, different design. Superman shifted his vision. There's kryptonite present. Several reinforced containers in the west section. That explains the choice of location, Natasha observed. Close enough to study your fortress, far enough to avoid detection. Tony landed beside Superman, his Iron Man suit gleaming against the snow. What's the call, Captain? Steve emerged from the Quinjet with his shield ready. We stick to reconnaissance. Superman and Iron Man take aerial positions. Widow and Hawkeye infiltrate and gather intel. I'll coordinate from the perimeter. No engagement unless absolutely necessary. If Luthor is replicating Chitauri portal technology, we can't afford to wait, Superman argued. And if we attack without proof, we hand him a public relations victory, Natasha countered. Luthor would love nothing more than to paint Superman as an alien menace attacking innocent research facilities. Superman couldn't argue with that logic. Luthor had spent years building his public image while subtly undermining Superman's. Fine. But at the first sign they're activating anything, I'm going in. The team split up, with Clint and Natasha using stealth tech to approach the facility's ventilation system. Superman hovered at cloud level, using his vision to monitor their progress while scanning for threats. I've got eyes on the security hub, Natasha reported after 20 minutes. Standard guards, but their weapons are definitely enhanced. Blue energy signatures like the ones from Metropolis. I'm accessing their data network, Clint added. Encryption is military grade plus something extra. Might be Kryptonian algorithms. Superman frowned. That shouldn't be possible without access to Kryptonian systems. Unless they've been inside your fortress, Tony suggested. A chill that had nothing to do with the Arctic weather ran down Superman's spine. He immediately turned toward his fortress, using his telescopic vision to check it from a distance. Something's wrong. He focused harder. The fortress security protocols have been tampered with. Someone's been inside. Superman, maintain position, Steve ordered. But Superman was already flying toward the Fortress of Solitude, ice crystals forming on his cape as he broke the sound barrier. Behind him, he heard Tony curse before following. Superman is breaking formation, Tony reported. I'm pursuing. Negative, Stark, Steve commanded. Maintain surveillance on the facility. Too late, he might need backup. Superman reached the fortress entrance, immediately noticing the subtle differences. The crystal lock mechanism had been reset recently. Inside, everything looked undisturbed at first glance, but his enhanced senses detected trace evidence of intruders. Microscopic boot prints. Lingering human scent. Equipment slightly out of alignment. Tony landed behind him as he accessed the central crystal console. Nice ice palace you've got here. Very supervillain chic. Superman ignored him, reviewing security logs. The Kryptonian AI reported no breaches, but there was a gap in the continuous recording, 3 hours missing 2 weeks ago. They bypassed the security by using the system's own protocols against it. Superman pulled up a holographic display showing which archives had been accessed. They were after information on the Phantom Zone. The what now? A dimensional prison where Kryptonian criminals were banished. Superman's expression grew grave. The portal they're building, they're trying to open the Phantom Zone. Tony stepped forward. Why would Luthor want to open an alien prison? Before Superman could answer, the Fortress AI activated, projecting the image of Jor-El, Kal-El. A perimeter breach is detected at the Arctic Research Station. Phantom Zone energy signatures are increasing. Superman turned to Tony. We need to get back there now. In his ear, Steve's voice was tense. We've got activity at the facility. They know we're here. Widow's been spotted, Clint reported urgently. Security converging on her position. Superman grabbed Tony's armor. Hold on. Wait, what are you? He didn't finish before Superman accelerated to just below supersonic speed, carrying Iron Man back to the facility in seconds. They arrived to chaos, alarm sirens wailing, security personnel mobilizing, and a pulsing blue energy emanating from the central chamber. They're activating the portal, Superman shouted over the comms. Captain, we need to move in now. Steve must have agreed because he was already breaching the main entrance, his shield deflecting energy blasts from security personnel. Natasha had been cornered in a laboratory but was holding her own against 3 guards. Superman deposited Tony on the roof and plunged through the ceiling, heading straight for the central chamber. Guards fired gravity weapons at him, but he was ready this time, moving too fast for them to track. He disabled 5 men in the span of 3 seconds, careful not to cause serious injury. The central chamber doors were reinforced with a familiar green glow. Kryptonite-infused steel. Superman hesitated, feeling the radiation already affecting him. Need a hand? Tony blasted through a side wall, repulsors glowing. Duck. Superman dropped as Tony fired a concentrated beam at the hinges, melting them instantly. The door collapsed inward, revealing the portal device, a massive ring of combined Chitauri and Kryptonian technology pulsing with energy. Scientists scrambled around it, making final adjustments as the center began to shimmer with an otherworldly light. Shut it down. Superman ordered, fighting through the kryptonite weakness. One scientist turned, a familiar face that made Superman's blood run cold. Emil Hamilton, once his ally, now looking at him with contempt. Too late, Superman. The breach is already forming. The portal's center crystallized into a window showing a gray, barren dimension filled with ghostly figures. The Phantom Zone. Superman lunged toward the control panel, but security forces fired concentrated kryptonite beams that drove him to his knees. Tony engaged the guards while Steve and the others fought their way toward the chamber. Natasha slid under crossfire to reach the controls, but Hamilton activated a failsafe that locked the system. It can't be stopped now, Hamilton gloated. The Phantom Zone will open, and Earth will finally see what real Kryptonians are like, not some farm boy playing hero. Through pain-blurred vision, Superman saw a figure approaching the portal boundary from the other side, a woman in a Kryptonian prison uniform, her face eerily similar to his own. Who is that? Tony demanded, blasting the last guard. Superman struggled to his feet. Pharaoh. Military leader. Mass murderer. If she gets through, this planet is in serious trouble. The portal boundary thinned as Farah reached toward it, her hand beginning to penetrate the dimensional barrier. Superman gathered his remaining strength and flew directly at the portal mechanism, heat vision targeting the power coupling. Everyone out, he shouted. This whole place is going to blow. Tony grabbed Natasha while Steve covered their retreat. Clint was already evacuating scientists who'd surrendered. Hamilton refused to leave, frantically trying to stabilize the portal as Farah's arm emerged into our dimension. Superman ripped the kryptonite emitters from the walls, feeling his strength return just enough for what he needed to do. He seized the main power core and tore it free, causing catastrophic system failure. Energy backlashed through the portal, pushing Farah back into the phantom zone as the dimensional window collapsed. Hamilton, we need to go now. Superman reached for the scientist. No. Hamilton fought against him. You've ruined everything. They would have helped us against the coming threats. They would have conquered Earth for themselves. Superman lifted the struggling scientist and flew through the collapsing facility, barely making it out before the underground levels imploded, creating a massive crater in the ice. The Quinjet hovered nearby as Superman delivered Hamilton to SHIELD custody. The team regrouped, battered but alive. That wasn't exactly reconnaissance, Steve remarked, though his tone held no real criticism. Threat neutralized though, Tony said, helmet retracting. Portal closed, bad guys captured. I call that a win. Except for Luthor's involvement, Natasha pointed out. No evidence directly linking him to this operation. Hamilton will talk, Clint suggested. Superman shook his head. No, he won't. And even if he did, Luthor would have insulated himself with enough layers of deniability. Fury's voice came through their comms. Return to base for debriefing. We'll sort through whatever data you manage to recover. Superman, we need to discuss your fortress security. As they boarded the Quinjet, Steve pulled Superman aside. For what it's worth, you made the right call. If that portal had fully opened. Thanks, Captain. Steve, he corrected with a small smile. We're teammates now. Superman nodded, feeling the weight of that word. Teammates. He'd been alone for so long, carrying the burden of his powers and responsibilities. Now he had allies who ran toward danger instead of away from it. People who might eventually become friends. It was a start. Clark Kent arrived at the New York bureau of the Daily Planet exactly 1 week later, cardboard box of belongings in hand. The office was smaller than Metropolis, but bustling with energy as reporters covered everything from city politics to the growing presence of superhumans. Kent. About time you showed up. Lois Lane was already there, desk decorated and computer running multiple news feeds. She looked completely at home despite having moved just days ago. Sorry, the moving truck was delayed. Clark set down his box at the empty desk opposite hers. You're settled in already? Unlike some people, I don't procrastinate. She tossed him a press badge. You'll need this. We're covering Stark's clean energy announcement at noon. Clark adjusted his glasses. We. Perry's orders. You handle the tech angle, I handle the Stark angle. She lowered her voice. And we both keep our eyes open for anything Avengers related. Word is they're operating out of Stark Tower now. Really? I hadn't heard that. Lois gave him a look. Try to keep up, Smallville. There's a whole superhero team assembling in our backyard. She grabbed her bag. Let's go. I want good seats. The press conference was held in Stark Tower's main atrium. Tony stood on a stage beside Pepper Potts, unveiling plans for arc reactor technology that could power entire cities. Clark took notes while scanning the crowd, habit from years of being alert for threats. He spotted Natasha in civilian clothes at the back of the room, monitoring security. She caught his eye and gave an almost imperceptible nod. They hadn't spoken since the Arctic mission, but the acknowledgement felt significant. Earth to Clark, Lois nudged him. Stark just announced a partnership with Wayne Enterprises and you're daydreaming. Sorry. Clark refocused as Tony wrapped up his presentation. And finally, Tony was saying, I'd like to address the rumors about Stark Tower's new tenants. The crowd leaned forward collectively. Yes, The Avengers have established a headquarters here. No, I won't be taking questions about it. Yes, we have movie nights. No, you're not invited. The press erupted with shouted questions. Tony ignored them all, walking off stage despite Pepper's visible frustration with his abrupt exit. That's our cue, Lois said, already pushing through the crowd toward a side exit where Tony had disappeared. Lois, we should stay with the main press pool, boring. Come on. She dragged him through a service corridor, somehow evading security with practiced ease. They emerged near a private elevator just as Tony approached. Mr. Stark. Lois Lane, Daily Planet. She thrust out her hand before security could intervene. Care to comment on reports that Superman has joined the Avengers? Tony stopped, eyeing them both. His gaze lingered on Clark for an extra beat before turning his charm on Lois. Ms. Lane. Your reputation precedes you. You didn't answer my question. Because it's classified. Tony grinned. But off the record? Let's just say the team got a significant power upgrade recently. He glanced at Clark again. You must be Kent. I read your Superman coverage. Clark shifted uncomfortably. Just doing my job. Interesting perspective on the Man of Steel. Almost like you know him personally. Tony's eyes twinkled with mischief. You two should come up for the real tour sometime. I'm sure Superman would approve. Before Clark could respond, the elevator opened and Steve Rogers stepped out. Tony, we need you upstairs. The, project we discussed is active. Tony nodded. Duty calls. Catch you later, reporters. As they walked away, Clark heard Tony whisper to Steve, that's him. Kent is Superman. Steve's reply was equally quiet. You sure? Glasses aren't much of a disguise when you've got facial recognition software. Clark felt his heart sink. 1 week with the Avengers, and his identity was already compromised. But strangely, he wasn't as panicked as he should have been. These people had fought alongside him, risked their lives against the same threats. Maybe it was time someone knew both sides of who he was. You okay? Lois asked, noting his distraction. You look pale. Clark forced a smile. Just thinking about our story. Stark basically confirmed Superman's on the team. Biggest scoop of the year. Lois was already typing notes on her phone. But something's not adding up. Why would Superman suddenly join a government-adjacent team after years of independence? What changed? It was a good question, one Clark was still answering for himself. As they left the tower, his phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Training exercise, 7 p.m. Bring the cape. P.S. Nice glasses, Clark. Clark pocketed the phone, watching Lois charge ahead, already planning their headline. His double life had just gotten exponentially more complicated. But for the first time in years, he felt like he might not have to carry everything alone. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating. It was a beginning. Chapter 2, Gods and Monsters. Clark's alarm blared at 5:30 a.m., and he silenced it with a gentle tap that still somehow dented the button. Third alarm clock this month. He really needed to work on controlling his strength when he was half asleep. He padded to the window of his modest Brooklyn apartment, pulling back the curtains to watch the sunrise. 2 weeks into his new life in New York, and he was still adjusting to the cacophony of sounds, 8 million people going about their lives, each with heartbeats he could distinguish if he focused. It was overwhelming compared to Metropolis, which had always felt more manageable. His phone buzzed with a text from Steve, morning run. Central Park, usual spot. Clark smiled. Captain America didn't know the meaning of sleeping in. He texted back a quick confirmation before hopping into the shower. 30 minutes later, he jogged up to the meeting point where Steve waited, bouncing lightly on his toes. Morning, Clark, Steve said, using his real name naturally now that they were away from the tower. After Tony had figured out his identity, Clark had officially introduced himself to the core team. It felt strange having people who knew both sides of him, but also oddly liberating. "Ready to lose again?" Clark asked with a grin. Steve laughed. "One of these days I'm going to catch you off guard." He took off without warning, sprinting down the path. Clark gave him a 5-second head start before accelerating. He could have overtaken Steve instantly, but where was the fun in that? Instead, he matched the super soldier's impressive pace, running alongside him. "So," Steve said between controlled breaths, "how's the newspaper job going?" "Lois is driving me crazy," Clark admitted. "She's convinced Superman has some ulterior motive for joining the Avengers. Won't let it go." "She's not wrong to ask questions," Steve replied, increasing his speed as they rounded a bend. "Accountability matters," says the guy who regularly breaks sound barriers on motorcycles through city streets. "That's different." "How's that?" "I use my turn signal." They both laughed, pushing harder as they approached their usual finish line, a hot dog stand just opening for the day. Steve put on an impressive burst of speed, but Clark still beat him by half a stride. "One of these days, Kent," Steve panted, hands on his knees. "You're getting closer," Clark lied cheerfully. They grabbed water bottles from their bags, Clark careful to appear winded enough to maintain his cover from any watching eyes. These morning runs had become a ritual, a chance to talk outside the pressure of missions or the scrutiny of Stark Tower. "Tony wants to run combat drills today," Steve said as they walked. "Says he's developed some new protocols for integrating your abilities with team tactics. Let me guess, most of them involve me being a human battering ram." Steve smiled. "He's still working through his issues with you. Give him time. It's been 2 weeks. Tony once held a grudge against me for 3 months because I said digital watches were tacky." Clark shook his head. "I'm trying, Steve. But sometimes I think he's deliberately testing my limits." "He is," Steve confirmed, surprising Clark with his candor. "Tony needs to understand everyone's breaking point, especially yours, since you're the powerhouse. It's how he processes risk." Clark's phone chimed with an incoming call from the Daily Planet. He held up a finger to Steve and answered. "Kent speaking. Where are you?" Lois demanded without preamble. "Luthor's holding an emergency press conference in 30 minutes. Something about a response to the alien threat. Get to LexCorp's New York headquarters now." "On my way," Clark hung up and gave Steve an apologetic look. "Duty calls, the reporter kind, not the cape kind." Steve nodded. "I'll tell Tony you'll be late for drills." "Thanks." "And Steve?" Clark hesitated. "If anything happens at the Luthor press conference, I'll have a team on standby," Steve promised. "Be careful, Clark. Luthor's smart, and he's got your number." Clark nodded and jogged away, ducking into an alley once out of sight. A quick change and burst of superspeed later, Clark Kent emerged from the subway near LexCorp's Manhattan skyscraper, straightening his tie as he joined the crowd of journalists. Lois was already there, somehow having secured a front row spot. She waved him over. "About time. I saved you a seat." "Thanks," Clark said, settling beside her and pulling out his notepad. "Any idea what this is about?" "Rumor has it LexCorp's developed some kind of anti-alien defense system. After what happened in New York with the Chitauri, then those weapons that showed up in Metropolis." She lowered her voice. "And now Superman joining the Avengers. Luthor's positioning himself as humanity's protector against outside influences." Clark frowned. "He's exploiting people's fears." "That's his whole brand," Lois agreed, then nudged him as the lights dimmed. "Here we go." Lex Luthor strode onto the stage with practiced confidence, his bald head gleaming under the spotlight. He wore an impeccably tailored suit and a smile that never quite reached his eyes. "Ladies and gentlemen of the press, thank you for coming on such short notice. Luther's voice carried effortlessly, a masterclass in public speaking. Recent events have made it clear that Earth faces unprecedented threats from beyond our atmosphere. The Chitauri invasion of New York was just the beginning. Behind him, a screen displayed footage of the Battle of New York, followed by images of Superman fighting the alien craft in Metropolis, and finally, grainy surveillance photos of the Arctic facility implosion. 2 weeks ago, a secret research installation in the Arctic was destroyed in a confrontation between the so-called Avengers and unknown hostile forces. Luther's expression grew grave. What the public hasn't been told is that this facility detected an approaching extraterrestrial signal, one that matches no known pattern in our database. Murmurs spread through the press corps. Clark tensed, exchanging a glance with Lois. Today, Luther continued, I am announcing the formation of LexCorp's Advanced Defensive Systems Division, dedicated to protecting humanity from threats beyond our world. He gestured, and the screen behind him showed sleek drone-like machines and what appeared to be orbital defense platforms. The Lex Shield program will deploy a network of satellites capable of detecting, tracking, and if necessary, neutralizing extraterrestrial threats before they reach our cities. Luther's smile returned. And unlike certain privately funded vigilante groups, Lex Shield will operate with full governmental oversight and transparency. The barb at the Avengers was unmistakable. Luther continued his presentation, unveiling plans for ground-based defense systems and specialized containment technology for hostile alien entities. When he opened the floor for questions, Lois's hand shot up first. Mr. Luther, isn't it true that LexCorp was implicated in the illegal weapons operation dismantled in Metropolis 2 weeks ago? The same operation using modified alien technology? Luther's smile never wavered. Ms. Lane, always a pleasure. Those allegations were thoroughly investigated and dismissed. LexCorp components were indeed found at the site, but they had been stolen from our facilities months earlier. We were victims, not perpetrators. And the Arctic facility? Lois pressed. Sources suggest LexCorp funding was behind that operation as well. Your sources are mistaken, Luther replied smoothly. Though I understand why some might connect those dots incorrectly. The truth is simpler, LexCorp has been monitoring unusual energy signatures in the Arctic region for scientific purposes, completely separate from the facility that was destroyed. Clark raised his hand next. Mr. Luther, Clark Kent, Daily Planet. Your presentation seems focused on defense against all extraterrestrial life. Do you make any distinction between potential threats and beings like Superman, who has protected Earth for years? Luther's eyes locked onto Clark's with unnerving intensity. An excellent question, Mr. Kent. While Superman has indeed performed heroic acts, recent events raise concerning questions. Why has he suddenly aligned himself with a paramilitary organization like the Avengers? What changed? And more importantly, what does he know that we don't? Luther approached the edge of the stage. Superman's powers make him functionally a god among us. History teaches us that gods are rarely benevolent indefinitely. Prudence demands preparation, not out of hatred or fear, but out of responsibility to humanity's future. The press conference continued for another 20 minutes, with Luther expertly deflecting challenging questions while elaborating on LexCorp's humanitarian mission to protect Earth. As journalists began filing out afterward, Clark felt a hand on his shoulder. Mr. Kent. Luther stood behind him, flanked by security. A word in private, if you don't mind. Lois shot Clark a worried look. He nodded reassuringly. Go ahead. I'll catch up. Once they were alone in a side room, Luther dismissed his security team and studied Clark with unsettling focus. Your Superman coverage has always fascinated me, Kent. You have a knack for being wherever he appears. Just lucky timing, Clark said carefully. Luther circled him slowly. You know what puzzles me? How you transferred to New York mere days before Superman joined the Avengers. Quite the coincidence. Clark maintained his mild demeanor. I go where the stories are, Mr. Luther. The Avengers are big news. Indeed. Luthor stopped directly in front of him. Just between us, off the record, of course, what's your personal assessment of Superman? Do you trust him? I think he tries to do the right thing, Clark answered honestly. Like most of us. Most of us can't level cities with a temper tantrum. Luthor smiled thinly. Did you know Kryptonians once visited Earth thousands of years ago? Ancient Sumerian texts describe beings with godlike powers who eventually turned on humanity. History repeats itself, Mr. Kent. Clark felt a chill. I wasn't aware you were an expert in ancient astronaut theories. I'm an expert in patterns, Mr. Kent. Luthor handed him a business card. If you ever want to discuss those patterns, or if you ever need protection from them, my door is always open. Before Clark could respond, Luthor's phone chimed. He checked it, his expression shifting subtly. Duty calls. Do consider what I've said. Not everything is as straightforward as heroes and villains. After Luthor left, Clark examined the card, using his microscopic vision to detect a tiny embedded tracker. He dropped it in a water glass on his way out, joining Lois, who waited impatiently by the elevators. What did Baldy want? She demanded. To rattle me. Or recruit me. Maybe both. Clark adjusted his glasses. He knows more about Kryptonians than he should. That's not comforting. Lois studied him. You look worried. Luthor mentioned an approaching extraterrestrial signal. That wasn't public knowledge. Lois's reporter instincts visibly kicked into high gear. You think it's real? Another invasion? I don't know. But I need to make a call. Back at Stark Tower, recently renamed Avengers Tower, the team gathered in the command center. Holographic displays showed satellite imagery and deep space telemetry data. The signal's real, Tony confirmed, manipulating the hologram to enlarge a section. First detected 3 days ago by S.H.I.E.L.D.'s Deep Space Network. It's approaching Earth on a direct course, accelerating in a way that defies our understanding of physics. Bruce Banner adjusted his glasses, studying the energy readings. The signature has some similarities to the Tesseract, but with significant differences. It's like nothing in our database. It matches something in mine, Clark said grimly. Kryptonian records mention a being called Brainiac, an artificial intelligence from Kala that consumed knowledge from countless worlds before destroying them. Cheery, Clint remarked from his perch on a nearby console. Brainiac was drawn to Krypton because of its advanced technology, Clark continued. He digitized the capital city of Kandor before the planet's destruction. If he's coming here. He's coming for you, Natasha finished. The last Kryptonian. Steve stepped forward. How long until it reaches Earth? Tony consulted the data. At current acceleration, 36 hours. Then we have 36 hours to prepare, Steve said, immediately shifting to tactical mode. Tony, work with Bruce on tracking capabilities. We need to know exactly where this thing will make landfall. Natasha, coordinate with S.H.I.E.L.D. for global response protocols. Clint, inventory our weapons systems, we need options that might affect an advanced AI. He turned to Clark. Superman, we need everything you know about this Brainiac. Weaknesses, capabilities, patterns, anything that might give us an edge. Clark nodded, impressed by how quickly Steve took command. I'll contact the Fortress AI. It might have more detailed records than what I've studied. Do it, Steve agreed. And Clark, we should consider evacuating anyone connected to your civilian identity. If this thing is hunting you specifically. The implication hung in the air. Clark thought of Lois, of his colleagues at the Daily Planet. I'll handle it. As the team dispersed to their assignments, Tony held Clark back. A word, Boy Scout. Clark steeled himself for another round of friction. What is it, Stark? To his surprise, Tony looked genuinely concerned. This Brainiac, you've faced it before? No. It was before my time on Krypton. But the records describe it as relentless, adaptive, and virtually unstoppable. Tony nodded, processing this. Look, we've had our differences. I still think your whole Clark Kent disguise is ridiculous, seriously, glasses, but if this thing's coming for you, it's coming for all of us. He pulled up a hologram showing a new suit design. I've been working on something. Armor specifically calibrated to amplify your natural abilities while providing protection against your known vulnerabilities. Kryptonite shielding, solar energy absorption panels to boost your power in low-light conditions. Clark stared at the design, genuinely surprised. You made this for me. Don't get sentimental. Tony closed the hologram. It's a prototype. Probably won't work. But if you want to stop by the lab later. It was as close to an olive branch as Tony Stark got. Clark nodded. I appreciate it, Tony. Yeah, well. Tony cleared his throat awkwardly. Can't have our big gun getting taken out early in the fight, can we? Before Clark could respond, the tower's alarms blared. Fury's voice came over the intercom, Avengers, we've got multiple unidentified objects entering Earth's atmosphere. Whatever your 36-hour plan was, you've got about 36 minutes now. The objects, sleek, metallic drones with skull-like features, descended on major cities worldwide. New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow, Beijing, all reported simultaneous incursions of the same technology. In the Quinjet racing toward Manhattan, Steve outlined their response plan. Intel suggests these are automated probes, not the main threat. They appear to be scanning and collecting data. Specifically, data about Superman, Tony added, already in his Iron Man suit with the faceplate up. Every drone is emitting a signal that matches Kryptonian frequencies. Clark stood by the jet's door in full Superman regalia, cape shifting in the air currents. They're hunting me through my energy signature. I can use that, draw them away from populated areas. Negative, Steve countered. That's exactly what they want. We stay together, protect civilians first, and neutralize these probes systematically. We've got 3 primary targets in New York, Natasha reported from the co-pilot's seat. 1 near Times Square, 1 at the harbor, and 1 circling the financial district. Widow and Hawkeye, take the harbor, Steve ordered. Iron Man, you're with me in the financial district. Superman, handle Times Square but stay on comms. The second anything changes, we regroup. Banner, you're our backup, only go green if absolutely necessary. Bruce nodded, clearly relieved to be holding back initially. I'll monitor the drone's transmission patterns from here. Might give us insight into what they're collecting. The Quinjet hovered over Times Square, where one of the drones, roughly the size of a small car, hovered above the panicking crowd, emitting a scanning beam that swept methodically across buildings and people. That's my stop, Superman said, moving to the exit ramp. Clark, Steve called, using his real name deliberately. Be careful. We don't know what these things can do. Superman nodded and launched himself from the jet, streaking toward Times Square. As he approached, the drone immediately ceased its scanning pattern and reoriented toward him, confirming it was indeed hunting Kryptonians. Target acquired, the drone announced in a mechanical voice that somehow still conveyed cold intelligence. Last son of Krypton identified. Beginning preliminary analysis. Superman accelerated directly at the machine, intending to disable it quickly with a precise strike. Instead, the drone emitted a pulse of green energy that hit him like a kryptonite sledgehammer. He faltered mid-flight, crashing into an empty taxi. Superman status? Steve's voice crackled through his earpiece. It's, using kryptonite energy somehow, Superman managed, pushing himself up from the crushed vehicle. But there's no actual kryptonite present. It's synthesizing the radiation signature. Fall back, Steve ordered. We'll regroup and, no time, Superman interrupted, watching the drone deploy what looked like collection apparatuses. It's starting to capture something. The drone began creating a spherical energy field around a portion of Times Square, buildings, streets, and thankfully few people now that the area had mostly evacuated. Everything within the field shimmered, becoming semi-transparent. "Bruce, what am I looking at?" Superman demanded, circling the phenomenon while staying outside the field's reach. "It appears to be some kind of digitization process," Bruce replied, voice tense. "Similar to what you described happening to Candor. It's copying that section of the city." Superman didn't wait for further analysis. He flew to a nearby water tower, ripped it free, and hurled it at the drone with precision. The water tank shattered against the machine, short-circuiting its field projectors. The digitization field flickered and collapsed. The drone immediately shifted priorities, retracting its collection tools and focusing fully on Superman. Primary directive: obtain Kryptonian specimen. Secondary objective suspended. It launched a barrage of energy weapons, not just kryptonite radiation but also what appeared to be red sun energy, concentrated sound waves, and some kind of neural disruptor. Superman dodged most but took a glancing hit from the neural weapon that sent stabbing pain through his mind. "It knows all my weaknesses," he reported through gritted teeth. "Fighting style adapting to my movements." "Hold on," Tony's voice came through. "Financial district drone neutralized. En route to your position." Superman couldn't wait. The drone was expanding its attack radius, endangering civilians who hadn't cleared the area. He used his heat vision, aiming for what appeared to be the machine's sensor array. The beams sliced through the outer hull but triggered a defensive protocol. The drone split into 3 smaller units that continued the coordinated attack. "Great," Superman muttered. "It can divide." He switched tactics, using his super breath to create a localized cyclone, trapping the smaller drones in a vortex. While they struggled against the wind, he flew through the cyclone at supersonic speed, striking each drone in succession with precisely calculated force. 2 of the mini-drones shattered under the impacts. The third adapted, generating a countervailing wind force that dispersed the cyclone. It launched a capture net composed of energy filaments that wrapped around Superman before he could evade. The net constricted, its energy signature oscillating between kryptonite and red sun radiation. Superman strained against it, feeling his strength fluctuate wildly as the net's energy disrupted his connection to Earth's yellow sun. Iron Man arrived, repulsors blazing as he targeted the drone's propulsion system. "Hang tight, Supes. I've got this." The drone instantly analyzed the new threat, redirecting resources to counter Iron Man's attack while maintaining the capture net. It fired a precision blast that caught Tony mid-flight, disrupting his suit's power systems momentarily. "What the hell?" Tony cursed as his suit reset. "It adapted to my tech in seconds." "It's a learning machine," Superman called, still struggling with the energy net. "Every attack we use gets catalogued and countered." Tony processed this information quickly. "Then let's give it something it can't predict. Jarvis, initiate protocol backbeat." Iron Man's suit emitted a chaotic, seemingly random pattern of energy pulses, each with different frequencies, intensities, and modulations. The drone struggled to analyze the overwhelming variety of inputs, its processing visibly slowing. "Superman, now!" Tony shouted. Using the drone's momentary confusion, Superman gathered his strength and burst free from the energy net. Without hesitation, he flew straight through the machine's central processing core at full speed, emerging from the other side with critical components clutched in his fist. The drone sputtered, its lights flickering, before crashing to the street below. "Target neutralized," Superman reported, landing beside the wreckage. "Harbor drone destroyed too," Natasha confirmed over comms. "Clint got creative with an EMP arrow." "All 3 primary targets down," Steve summarized. "But we've got reports of 12 more worldwide." Superman examined the components in his hand, alien technology far beyond Earth's current capabilities, but with elements he recognized from Kryptonian archives. These aren't just drones. They're extensions of Brainiac himself, like fingers reaching ahead of the main body. Speaking of which, Bruce cut in urgently. That main signal just accelerated dramatically. New ETA, 3 hours. Did we trigger some kind of response? Steve asked. No, Superman replied grimly. This was always the plan. The drones were reconnaissance. Now that they've collected enough data, the main event begins, Tony finished. Back at Avengers Tower, the team regrouped to assess the situation. Fury joined via secure video link, his expression even more severe than usual. 17 drones worldwide, all neutralized, he reported. But not before they transmitted significant data back to the approaching vessel. Whatever's coming, it knows a hell of a lot about us now. Particularly about Superman, Bruce added, displaying a holographic analysis of the drone's scanning patterns. They focused on Kryptonian energy signatures, but also mapped population centers, defense installations, and power infrastructure. Classic invasion prep, Natasha observed. Clark paced the room, unable to shake the feeling that they were missing something. This doesn't match Brainiac's usual pattern. The records indicate he typically begins with a complete digitization of key knowledge centers before any direct confrontation. Maybe you changed the equation, Steve suggested. The presence of a Kryptonian might have altered his approach. Tony looked up from the drone components he'd been examining. Or maybe this isn't about invasion at all. He projected his findings onto the main display. These drones weren't just scanning, they were testing our defenses, cataloging our responses. Like a chess player probing for weaknesses before committing to a strategy. Tony's right, Bruce agreed. The pattern suggests information gathering rather than conquest preparation. Information about what? Clint asked. Clark suddenly understood. About me. My capabilities, my allegiances, my weaknesses. He turned to face the team. Brainiac doesn't want Earth, he wants the knowledge I possess. I'm the last repository of complete Kryptonian culture and science. And that's worth crossing galaxies for. Fury looked skeptical. Brainiac's sole purpose is to collect and preserve knowledge, then destroy the original source to make his collection unique, Clark explained. In his twisted logic, he's a preserver of civilizations. By digitizing them and destroying the originals, Steve said, disgust evident in his voice. Exactly. And as the last Kryptonian, I represent the final piece of a collection he started when he digitized Kandor. A tense silence fell over the room as the implications sank in. Finally, Tony spoke. So what's the play? We can't exactly hide you. We don't hide, Steve decided, moving to the tactical display. We prepare a defense in depth. Multiple layers, fallback positions, contingency plans. And we use me as bait, Clark added, earning concerned looks from the others. It's the logical move. Brainiac wants me, let him think he can get me. Absolutely not, Steve countered immediately. Cap's right, Tony agreed, surprising everyone with his support of Steve. The second Brainiac gets his mechanical hands on you, we lose our biggest gun and he gets exactly what he came for. I'm not suggesting we make it easy, Clark clarified. But we need to control the battlefield. Draw him to a location of our choosing, away from civilians. Natasha nodded slowly. It could work. If we set the terms of engagement. Too risky, Steve maintained. This thing adapted to our attacks in seconds. Any plan we make, it will counter almost immediately. Not if the plan relies on something it can't predict, Clark argued. Human ingenuity. Brainiac understands patterns, logic, tactics, but he's consistently undone by unexpected, irrational choices that no algorithm can anticipate. Fury leaned forward in his transmission. What are you suggesting, Superman? A plan that makes no logical sense. One that depends not on power or technology, but on trust and timing. Clark looked around at his teammates, people he'd known for mere weeks yet was about to entrust with everything. And it starts with me surrendering to Brainiac. The Avengers established their position in the New Mexico desert, far from major population centers. Satellite imagery showed Brainiac's ship, a massive, skull-shaped vessel bristling with technology, descending through the atmosphere on a direct course for their location. He took the bait, Tony reported from his aerial position. Ship's trajectory locked on Superman's position. All civilians evacuated from 50-mile radius, Natasha confirmed from the mobile command center they'd established. SHIELD has long-range weapons locked, but holding fire as planned. Superman stood alone in the desert, watching the massive ship approach. The plan was simple in concept, complex in execution: allow Brainiac to capture Superman, letting the AI believe it had achieved its primary objective. Meanwhile, Iron Man would infiltrate the ship using tech derived from the captured drones to mask his signature. Once inside, he would locate and deploy a specially designed virus created by Bruce and Tony to disrupt Brainiac's systems long enough for Superman to break free and the team to launch a coordinated attack. Ship entering visual range, Superman reported, the massive vessel now visible against the blue sky. "It's bigger than I expected." The skull ship was enormous, at least a mile across, with glowing green energy emanating from various ports and sensors. It slowed as it approached, hovering ominously above the desert floor. "Heat signatures indicate weapon systems powering up," Bruce warned from the command center. "Be ready." A beam of green light shot down from the ship's underside, scanning Superman thoroughly. A moment later, a mechanical voice boomed across the landscape: "Kal-El of Krypton. Last survivor. Last repository of Kryptonian knowledge. Your collection will complete the Kryptonian archive." Superman projected confidence, hands on hips in his characteristic pose. "Brainiac, I presume. I've been expecting you. Your awareness is irrelevant. Your cooperation unnecessary." A more focused beam shot down, enveloping Superman in green energy that simultaneously weakened him with kryptonite radiation while beginning the digitization process. He gritted his teeth against the pain but didn't resist. The plan required his capture. "Be ready," Steve whispered into the comms from his hidden position. "Iron Man, status?" "In position," Tony confirmed, hovering behind a rocky outcropping, invisible to Brainiac's sensors thanks to the countermeasures they'd developed. "Ready to board once Superman's inside." The beam intensified, lifting Superman off the ground. His body began to sparkle with digitization effects, the process clearly painful but progressing as anticipated. "Hang in there, Clark," Steve encouraged quietly. Suddenly, multiple smaller beams shot out from the ship, sweeping the surrounding area in a search pattern. Additional life forms detected. Avengers presence confirmed. Deception protocols identified. "Shit, he made us." Clint exclaimed, rolling from his sniper position as a beam targeted his location. "Stick to the plan," Steve ordered, though tension edged his voice. "Superman continues as primary, we hold positions unless..." A massive pulse of energy erupted from the ship, temporarily disabling all their communications and electronic equipment. When systems rebooted 30 seconds later, Superman was gone, fully absorbed into the ship. "Superman captured," Natasha reported tensely. Comms restored. "Iron Man, proceed with infiltration." No response came. "Iron Man, report status," Steve demanded. After a worrying pause, Tony's voice finally came through, strained and breaking up. "Ship has adaptive countermeasures, can't approach without detection. Need new plan." The skull ship began to rise, clearly preparing to leave Earth's atmosphere with its prize. "We're losing our window," Bruce warned, the concern evident in his voice. Steve made a split-second decision. "New plan. Hulk, we need you." Bruce didn't question the call. The camera showed him removing his glasses. "Coming right up, Cap." Moments later, the Hulk burst from the command center, roaring as he leapt impossible distances toward the rising ship. The vessel immediately targeted him with weapons fire, but Hulk dodged with surprising agility, using rock formations for cover as he closed the distance. Primitive entity. Categorized as non-essential. The ship fired more concentrated beams, but Hulk was already airborne in a tremendous jump that carried him to the vessel's lower hull. With a roar of effort, he punched directly into the metal, creating a sizable dent, then began tearing at the damaged section. Hulk making entry, Natasha reported. Iron Man, can you reach that breach? On it, Tony confirmed, streaking from his position toward the new opening. He fired repulsor blasts at the ship's weapons to provide cover as Hulk continued ripping apart the hull plating. Inside the vessel, Superman was suspended in a digitization chamber, his body partially converted to data as Brainiac methodically extracted his knowledge and memories. Through the haze of pain, he could sense the AI's presence, cold, calculating, utterly alien in its thought patterns. Your resistance is noted but futile, Brainiac communicated directly into his mind. The digitization process is irreversible once completed. Images flashed through Superman's consciousness, Krypton before its destruction, his parents, the Fortress of Solitude, his battles on Earth, his Clark Kent identity, the Avengers, Lois. Brainiac was systematically cataloging everything that made him who he was. You won't succeed, Superman managed to project back. I already have. Your allies' attack is accounted for. Probability of their success, 0.0087%. The ship shuddered as Hulk tore through another layer of defenses. Alarm systems activated throughout the vessel as Iron Man finally breached the outer hull, flying through maintenance corridors toward the central chamber where Superman was held. I'm in, Tony reported through the now restored comms. Following the energy signature to Superman's location. This place is like a technological nightmare, even Jarvis is having trouble making sense of it. Stay focused, Steve directed from the ground, where he and the others were executing the contingency plan, using S.H.I.E.L.D.'s heavy weapons to target the ship's propulsion systems, keeping it from leaving atmosphere. Find Superman, deploy the virus, then get out. Inside the ship, mechanical sentries converged on Hulk, who was smashing through bulkheads with unrestrained fury. The green behemoth roared as energy weapons struck him from multiple directions, but rather than weakening, the pain only fueled his rage. Hulk smash robot head. Iron Man used the chaos to slip deeper into the ship, following holographic guidance from Jarvis. Almost at Superman's position. 30 seconds. In the digitization chamber, Brainiac manifested a physical form, a green-skinned humanoid with a network of lights across its skull-like head. It approached Superman with clinical detachment. Your knowledge of Krypton is unexpectedly limited, KLEL. Your education was incomplete. Brainiac's voice was smoother in person, though no less cold. However, your experience of human culture provides fascinating context for a species soon to be preserved. Superman struggled against the energy bonds, the digitization process now at 70% complete according to a nearby display. Earth isn't yours to preserve. All knowledge is mine to preserve. All civilizations exist to be catalogued. A thunderous crash interrupted as Iron Man blasted through the final door, repulsors glowing. Sorry to crash the party. Actually, no, I'm not sorry at all. Brainiac turned, unfazed. Anthony Stark. Iron Man. Probability suggested your arrival via this route. Yeah. Did they suggest this too? Tony fired a specialized projectile, not at Brainiac, but at the chamber's control console. The projectile attached itself and deployed the virus Bruce had designed, its code specifically targeting the digitization process. The chamber's lights flickered as the virus spread through Brainiac's systems. Countermeasure detected. Adapting. Adapt to this, Tony launched a barrage of micromissiles at Brainiac directly, forcing the AI to defend itself while the virus worked. The digitization process stalled at 76%. Superman felt strength returning to portions of his body as the chamber's hold weakened. With a tremendous effort, he broke one arm free, then the other. Impossible. The process cannot be reversed. I'm doing the impossible before breakfast these days, Superman replied, fully breaking free from the chamber. He stumbled slightly, still weak from the partial digitization, but quickly regained his footing. Tony, status on the virus? Working but not fast enough. Brainiac's already developing antibodies or whatever the robot equivalent is. The AI's form flickered as it diverted resources to combat the virus. Your primitive programming is ingenious but ultimately futile. My systems are self-evolving. The ship lurched violently as shield weapons struck the propulsion arrays. Warning lights flashed throughout the chamber. Hull integrity compromised in multiple sections, Jarvis reported in Tony's helmet. The Hulk has destroyed approximately 23% of the ship's defensive capabilities. Superman's strength was returning rapidly now that he was free of the chamber. We need to find the central processing core, the physical housing for Brainiac's consciousness. Jarvis, scan for the highest concentration of data traffic, Tony ordered, continuing to engage Brainiac with repulsor blasts that the AI dodged with inhuman precision. Central core located, Jarvis confirmed after a moment. 2 levels down, heavily shielded. I'll clear the path, Superman said, stomping his foot through the floor and creating a direct route downward. You keep him busy. Oh sure, leave me with the homicidal AI, Tony muttered as Superman disappeared through the hole. He turned his attention back to Brainiac, who was advancing methodically. So, you collect knowledge, huh? Here's a human saying for your database, you messed with the wrong planet. Superman crashed through level after level, following the energy signatures to Brainiac's core. He found it housed in a spherical chamber, a pulsing green crystal matrix surrounded by layers of protective technology. As he approached, defensive systems activated automatically, firing concentrated beams of kryptonite energy. He powered through the pain, using his heat vision to target what appeared to be cooling mechanisms. The systems overheated rapidly, creating gaps in the defenses that allowed him to advance closer. Found the core, he reported through comms. Heavily defended but vulnerable to thermal overload. Don't destroy it yet, Bruce's voice came through urgently. If Brainiac's consciousness is dispersed without proper containment, it could infect Earth's networks. We need controlled shutdown. Hurry it up, Natasha added. Ship structural integrity is failing. If that thing crashes in a populated area, working on it, Superman replied, dodging another energy blast while calculating his approach. Above him, Tony continued his battle with Brainiac's physical form, which was becoming increasingly erratic as the virus spread through its systems. Your virus attacks my connectivity. Inefficient. I am rerouting core functions. That's the idea, Tin Man, keep chasing those reroutes while we box you in. Brainiac paused, head tilting as it processed something. Curious. Your strategy has an 87% probability of failure, yet you proceed. Irrational behavior suggests alternative objective. Tony smirked inside his helmet. Now you're getting it. In the core chamber, Superman had managed to disable the primary defenses. The crystal matrix pulsed more rapidly, as if sensing the threat. Bruce, how do I shut this down without dispersing it? There should be a primary connection point, an interface where the crystal matrix connects to the ship's systems. Superman scanned the apparatus and located a junction box of alien design. Found it. You need to insert the containment drive Tony's carrying. It'll establish a quantum boundary around Brainiac's consciousness. Small problem with that plan, Tony interrupted, his voice strained as he evaded Brainiac's increasingly desperate attacks. I can't exactly excuse myself from this dance party. The ship rocked again as another shield missile struck. Warning klaxons blared throughout the vessel. Propulsion systems failing. Initiating emergency protocols. The crystal matrix suddenly glowed blinding bright, and energy surged through the ship. Above, Brainiac's physical form dissolved into particles that streamed toward the core. "He's consolidating," Tony warned. "Whatever you're going to do it now." Superman made a split-second decision. "Tony, I need the containment drive. Drop through the hole I made, now." Tony didn't question it, diving through the opening as Brainiac's essence streamed past him. He tossed the specialized drive to Superman, who caught it one-handed while using his heat vision to create an access point in the junction box. "Primitive beings. Your resistance is an interesting variable but ultimately meaningless." Brainiac's voice echoed from everywhere as his consciousness reintegrated with the core, causing the crystal matrix to pulse with power. Defensive systems reactivated, more intense than before. Superman withstood the onslaught of energy beams, using his body to shield the junction box as he inserted the containment drive. The device activated immediately, creating a shimmering field around the crystal matrix. "Containment field active," Superman reported, backing away as the matrix began to flicker erratically. "Is it working?" "Partially," Bruce replied, his voice tense. "The field is containing most of the consciousness, but readings show fragments escaping through the ship's communication array. He's trying to transmit himself off-world." "Not happening," Tony declared, firing his uni-beam at the chamber ceiling, severing connections to the ship's external communications. The crystal matrix pulsed violently as Brainiac's consciousness fought against the containment field. The ship lurched again, now clearly losing altitude. "We're out of time," Steve warned over comms. "That ship is coming down, and you need to be clear before it does." "What about Brainiac?" Superman asked, watching the containment field fluctuate. "The drive is designed to maintain integrity even through a crash," Bruce assured him. "But you both need to evacuate now." Superman nodded to Tony. "Time to go." "After you, Boy Scout." They fought their way back through the ship, encountering failing systems and collapsed corridors. The Hulk had apparently moved on to new sections, leaving destruction in his wake that provided them escape routes. As they reached the outer hull, Superman paused, something catching his attention. "Wait. Not the time for sightseeing," Tony urged. "Look." Superman pointed to a chamber they were passing. Inside were what appeared to be miniaturized cities under glass domes. Dozens of them, each a perfect, tiny replica of an alien metropolis. "Are those the digitized cities Brainiac has collected?" Superman confirmed, approaching one dome in particular. "Including Kandor." The miniature Kryptonian capital gleamed under its dome, impossibly detailed, with microscopic movement visible within, people, vehicles, life preserved in miniature. "We can't leave them," Superman decided, reaching for the Kryptonian city. "Ship structural integrity at 31% and falling," Jarvis warned in Tony's helmet. "Estimated time to impact, 4 minutes, 17 seconds. "Clark, we don't have time to save all of them," Tony argued. "Then we save what we can," Superman replied, carefully lifting the dome containing Kandor. "Help me with the others." Tony hesitated only briefly before selecting several domes, his suit systems analyzing and identifying the most viable specimens. Together they gathered what they could carry, Superman taking Kandor and 3 others, Tony managing 5 with his armor's assistance. They reached the breach Hulk had created just as the ship entered a catastrophic descent phase. Outside, they could see the New Mexico desert rushing up to meet them. "Go!" Superman shouted, and they flew clear of the doomed vessel seconds before it struck the ground with devastating force. The impact was tremendous, a shockwave that flattened desert vegetation for miles, followed by secondary explosions as the ship's power systems detonated. From a safe distance, the Avengers watched the destruction, the skull-shaped craft now a burning wreck half buried in the desert floor. "Containment field holding," Bruce confirmed, monitoring readings from the specialized drive. "Brainiac's primary consciousness is secured." "And the fragments that escaped?" Steve asked. "Minimal. Without the core, they'll degrade within hours. Shields already tracking them through the global network." Superman landed gently beside the command center, still carrying the precious domes. Tony arrived moments later, setting down his collection with uncharacteristic care. "Are those cities?" Natasha asked, approaching cautiously. "Civilizations Brainiac preserved before destroying their planets," Superman explained, his expression somber as he gazed at Kandor. "Including my home." The team gathered around the domes in silence, the magnitude of what they were seeing settling over them. Millions of lives, compressed into spaces no larger than snow globes. "Can they be restored?" Steve finally asked. "Return to normal size?" "I don't know," Superman admitted. "The technology required would be extraordinary." "Well," Tony said, helmet retracting to reveal his face, smudged but determined. "Good thing you know an extraordinary engineer." In the aftermath, S.H.I.E.L.D. established a secure facility around Brainiac's crashed ship, with the containment drive housed in a specially designed vault. The miniaturized cities were transferred to a research laboratory where Bruce and Tony could study them safely, searching for ways to potentially restore them. Clark stood at the window of the Avengers Tower common area, watching the city lights come on as evening fell. The day's Daily Planet headline was pulled up on a tablet beside him, "Alien Vessel Defeated by Avengers, Superman," with Lois's byline. The article detailed the confrontation in the desert while carefully avoiding classified information, though knowing Lois, she probably knew more than she was allowed to print. "Penny for your thoughts," Steve said, joining him at the window. "Just thinking about balance," Clark replied. "For years I operated alone, handling everything myself. Then in one mission with the team, we saved civilizations I never knew still existed. People I thought were lost forever." Steve nodded. "That's what teams do at their best. Achieve things none of us could manage alone. It's still adjustment. Having people know both sides of me. Trust takes time," Steve acknowledged. "But today was a good start." The elevator doors opened, and Tony strode in, heading straight for the bar. "Who wants a drink?" "I'm having 3. Hulk containment and cleanup is not good for my blood pressure." "Bruce okay?" Clark asked. "Sleeping it off in the Hulk-proof room." Tony poured himself a generous scotch. "He'll be embarrassed about the puny robot head comments tomorrow, but we got some great footage for the Christmas party." Natasha and Clint arrived next, both looking exhausted but satisfied. "Fury says the containment is holding," Natasha reported, accepting the vodka Tony offered. "Brainiac's consciousness is secure and isolated from any networks." "What about the cities?" Clark asked. Tony sipped his drink. "Early analysis suggests the miniaturization technology is similar to PIM particles but fundamentally different." "Fascinating stuff, really. If we can reverse engineer it, we might be able to restore Kandor," Clark finished, hope evident in his voice. "Don't pop the champagne yet, Soups," Tony cautioned. "We're talking about technology centuries beyond what we have now." "But," he raised his glass, "we've got Earth's mightiest heroes and brightest minds on the case. I like our odds." The team settled into comfortable conversation, reviewing the mission and planning improvements for next time. Clark found himself smiling despite the exhaustion. For the first time since joining the Avengers, he felt like he truly belonged, not just as Superman, the powerful alien, but as Clark Kent, a person with hopes and vulnerabilities like anyone else. His phone buzzed with a text from Lois, "Great quote for tomorrow's follow-up. Dinner to discuss. Luigi's at 8. Clark hesitated, aware of his teammates watching with varying degrees of subtlety. "Hot date, Kent?" Tony teased, having obviously noticed the text. "Just a colleague. Wanting to discuss the article." Natasha snorted. "Right." The way she was looking at Superman during that press conference yesterday was very collegial. "She doesn't know about, Clark gestured vaguely at himself. "Maybe she should," Steve suggested quietly. "Having someone in your civilian life who knows the truth, it helps. Clark considered this. His parents had always been his anchors, but they were far away in Smallville. Here in New York, he had teammates who knew his secret, but no one in his daily life as Clark Kent. "I'll think about it," he promised, typing a quick reply accepting the dinner invitation. As the evening progressed, a news alert captured everyone's attention. Lex Luthor was giving a press conference about the day's events. "Turn it up," Steve requested, and Jarvis obliged. Luthor stood at a podium, impeccably dressed as always, his expression appropriately grave. "Today's incident confirms what I've been warning about. Earth is woefully unprepared for extraterrestrial threats. While we're thankful for the Avengers' intervention, we cannot rely solely on superhumans to protect us." He gestured to displays showing LexCorp's defense technology. "That's why I'm announcing an accelerated timeline for the Lex Shield program. The first orbital platforms will launch next month, creating a protective network around our planet." "He's capitalizing on the fear," Natasha observed. "Smart move." Additionally, Luthor continued, "I've been asked by the President to head a new advisory council on extraterrestrial threats, working alongside but independent from S.H.I.E.L.D. Clark frowned. "He's positioning himself as Earth's protector. And setting himself up as a legitimate counterbalance to the Avengers," Tony added. "Politically savvy." The final question came from a reporter off-screen. "Mr. Luthor, what about allegations that your Arctic facility was studying alien technology similar to what was used in today's attack?" Luthor's smile never wavered. "LexCorp studies many technologies to better protect humanity. I make no apologies for seeking knowledge that might save lives." He leaned forward slightly. "The real question is, why do beings like Superman attract these threats to our world? What is it about his presence that keeps bringing danger to our doorstep?" The broadcast ended there, leaving an uncomfortable silence in the Avengers' common room. "He's not entirely wrong," Clark finally said. "Brainiac came because of me." "Brainiac came because that's what Brainiac does," Tony countered. "You didn't invite him." "No, but my existence here made Earth a target." Steve placed a hand on Clark's shoulder. "The team doesn't see it that way. Neither should you." Clark nodded, grateful for the support but still troubled. He checked his watch. "I should go. I've got that dinner." As he headed for the elevator, Tony called after him. "Kent. For what it's worth, Luthor's wrong about you. And I'm rarely wrong about being right about someone else being wrong." Clark smiled despite himself. "Thanks, Tony." Luigi's was a small Italian restaurant in Midtown, the kind of place with checkered tablecloths and candles in wine bottles. Clark arrived 5 minutes late to find Lois already seated, reviewing notes while sipping red wine. "Sorry I'm late," he apologized, sliding into the chair opposite her. "I ordered you that pasta thing you like," she said without looking up. "The one with the garlic that makes you smell like a pizzeria for days." "Thanks, I think." Clark adjusted his glasses, studying her. "So, this follow-up article?" Lois finally set down her notes, fixing him with an intense gaze. "Drop the act, Clark. We both know why we're here." His heart rate spiked. "We do. The way you disappeared during the alien ship incident. The same way you always disappear when Superman shows up." She leaned forward. "You're his source, aren't you? His inside contact at the Daily Planet." Clark nearly choked on the water he'd just sipped. "What?" "It's the only explanation. You've got some kind of arrangement with him. That's how you always get the quotes, the details no one else has." She looked triumphant. "That's why you moved to New York when he joined the Avengers." Relief washed over Clark, followed immediately by guilt at the deception. "Lois, don't deny it," she interrupted. "I'm not mad. I'm impressed, actually. But I want in on this arrangement. Whatever deal you have with Superman, I want joint access." The waiter arrived with their food, giving Clark precious seconds to think. When they were alone again, he carefully formulated his response. It's complicated, Lois. My relationship with Superman isn't something I can just share. So there is a relationship. She looked victorious. I knew it. Not like that, Clark hastily clarified. It's more of a trust thing. Lois studied him with narrowed eyes. There's something you're not telling me. Lots of things, he admitted honestly. But not because I don't trust you. Then why? Clark removed his glasses to clean them, a nervous habit. Sometimes knowing things puts people in danger. I'm a big girl, Clark. I chase stories in war zones and interview supervillains. Danger is part of the job. This is different. He replaced his glasses, decision forming. Steve was right, having someone who knew both sides would help. And if he was honest with himself, he wanted Lois to know. Listen, after dinner, there's something I need to show you. If it's your Superman memorabilia collection, I already saw the action figure on your desk. It's not that. Clark smiled. Just, trust me. Dinner proceeded with Lois drilling him for details about the Avengers while Clark deflected as best he could. They split a tiramisu for dessert, and when the check came, Clark insisted on paying. So, Lois said as they left the restaurant, what's this mysterious thing you need to show me? Not here. Clark led her toward a quiet side street. We need somewhere private. Lois raised an eyebrow. If this is some weird come on, Kent. It's not that either. He checked to ensure they were alone, then turned to face her directly. Lois, what would you say if I told you your theory about me and Superman was both completely wrong and completely right? I'd say you've been spending too much time with Tony Stark's riddles. She crossed her arms. Just tell me. Clark took a deep breath, then slowly removed his glasses. He stood straighter, shoulders back, the mild-mannered reporter posture falling away like a discarded coat. The truth is, I don't have a special arrangement with Superman, he said, his voice deeper, more resonant without the deliberate softness he affected as Clark. I am Superman. Lois stared at him, expression cycling through disbelief, confusion, and dawning realization. That's impossible. Superman has powers, he flies, he's... She gestured vaguely at all of him. In response, Clark gently floated several inches off the ground, maintaining eye contact. Oh my God, Lois whispered. She reached out tentatively, touching his chest as if to confirm he was real. Then abruptly, she punched his arm. You jerk. All this time. All those interviews I gave you about yourself. I'm sorry, he said sincerely, settling back to the ground. Secret identities are complicated. Complicated? She laughed incredulously. Clark, complicated is having 2 Twitter accounts. This is insane. I've worked beside you for years. And now you know why I had to keep it secret. He gestured to a nearby alley. Can we go somewhere more private to discuss this? Maybe, up. Lois followed his gaze upward, understanding his meaning. You want to fly me somewhere? If you're comfortable with that. She hesitated only briefly before nodding. Okay, Smallville. Show me how the other half lives. Clark scooped her up carefully, her arms automatically going around his neck. Hold on. They ascended slowly at first, giving Lois time to adjust to the sensation. Her initial tension gradually relaxed into wonder as New York spread out beneath them, the city lights creating a glittering tapestry. This is how you see the world, she murmured, looking down. Every day. One of the ways, he confirmed, accelerating gently as they climbed higher. He took her to the top of the Statue of Liberty, setting her down carefully on a maintenance platform with a spectacular view of the harbor and city beyond. I've wanted to tell you for a long time, Clark admitted. But it never seemed safe or fair to put that burden on you. Why now? Lois asked, still processing the revelation. Joining the Avengers changed things. Having teammates who know both sides of me made me realize how tired I am of always hiding. He leaned against the railing beside her. And if I'm honest, I wanted you to know the real me. Lois shook her head slowly. The glasses. That was your whole disguise. Glasses and a different posture. And careful behavior, constant vigilance, and a lot of luck, he added. Though apparently not enough to fool you completely. I thought you had a connection to Superman, not that you were him. She turned to face him directly. Wait, does Perry know? No. Only my parents, and now the Avengers. And you. Lois absorbed this information, her reporter's mind visibly connecting dots. So when you disappeared during emergencies. I'm changing into the suit, yes. And all those lame excuses about returning library books or feeding parking meters. Clark winced. I never claimed to be a good liar. No kidding. She stared at him with fresh eyes. You know what bothers me most? I prided myself on being so observant, such a great reporter, and I missed this massive story sitting at the desk across from me. If it helps, you got closer than anyone else ever has. He offered a small smile. And now you have the biggest exclusive possible. Which I can never publish. She sighed dramatically before a thought struck her. The Brainiac attack today, you were there, fighting. I saw the footage. Yes. It was intense. Were you scared? The question caught him off guard. People rarely asked Superman if he was afraid. Yes, he admitted quietly. Brainiac knew all my weaknesses. He nearly turned me into a digital file. But the team came through. Lois processed this, then asked, what does it feel like? Having powers like yours? Lonely, sometimes, he answered honestly. Overwhelming, often. But also, like a responsibility I can't ignore. A comfortable silence fell between them as they looked out over the city. Finally, Lois spoke again. So what happens now? That depends, Clark replied. Can you handle knowing this about me? It could put you in danger. People might target you to get to me. Lois laughed. Clark, I've been dangled off buildings by supervillains at least 3 times this year alone. Danger and I are old friends. Fair point. Besides, she added more softly, now I understand why you keep everyone at arm's length. Why you never let anyone get too close. She looked at him meaningfully. Must be exhausting, never being fully yourself with anyone. It is, he acknowledged, feeling strangely vulnerable beneath her perceptive gaze. Well, she decided, I'm glad you told me. Though I reserve the right to be angry about all those times you scooped me with your own quotes. Clark laughed, relief washing through him. That's fair. A distant explosion suddenly caught his attention, head turning sharply toward the sound. What is it? Lois asked, immediately alert. Fire at a chemical plant in Jersey. I should go. He hesitated. I'm sorry to cut this short. Don't be. This is who you are. She stepped back. Go save the day, Superman. Clark nodded gratefully, then spun quickly into his Superman attire, a skill perfected over years of rapid changes. We'll talk more later, he asked, hovering slightly above the platform. Count on it, Lois promised. And Clark? Thank you for trusting me. With a smile and a nod, Superman shot skyward, a red and blue streak against the night sky. Lois watched him disappear, reporter's notebook already in hand, jotting down thoughts about the man she thought she knew, and the hero she was just beginning to understand. Deep beneath LexCorp headquarters, in a laboratory accessible only to Lex Luthor himself, a team of scientists worked feverishly around a circular platform. In the center, a shimmering field contained fragments of alien technology salvaged from the crashed Brainiac ship. Luthor observed from behind thick protective glass, expression impassive as technicians in hazmat suits carefully manipulated the fragments. "Analysis confirms it, sir," reported the lead scientist through an intercom. "These components contain the same dimensional phasing technology we observed in the Arctic facility." "And the data packets?" Luther inquired. "Partially intact. The AI fragmentation was extensive, but we've isolated several complete memory clusters." The scientist hesitated. "Sir, if these readings are accurate, they contain information about something called the Phantom Zone." A rare, genuine smile spread across Luther's face. "Excellent. Continue the recovery process. Priority on any data related to Kryptonian vulnerabilities or this Phantom Zone." "Yes, sir. There's one more thing." The scientist manipulated controls, bringing up a holographic display. "We detected an energy signature broadcasting from the wreckage just before S.H.I.E.L.D. secured the site. It appears to be some kind of beacon or distress signal, aimed at deep space." Luther's expression remained neutral, but his eyes gleamed with interest. "Keep that information in-house for now. Recalibrate our deep space monitoring network to watch for any response." As he turned to leave, Luther paused at a workstation displaying footage of Superman flying from the Statue of Liberty, carrying what appeared to be Lois Lane. "Interesting," he murmured, making a mental note. "Very interesting indeed." In the darkness of deep space, far beyond Earth's detection capabilities, the automated beacon from Brainiac's destroyed vessel continued its silent broadcast. The message was simple, repeating endlessly: "Primary unit compromised. Kryptonian specimen located. Coordinates transmitted. Phantom Zone coordinates identified." And somewhere in the void, something received the signal and changed course. Chapter 3, Last Sons. 3 weeks after Brainiac's defeat, Clark sat in a S.H.I.E.L.D. laboratory watching Tony and Bruce examine the miniaturized city of Kandor. The dome containing his birth civilization rested in a specialized scanning apparatus, surrounded by holographic displays showing microscopic details of the city within. "It's incredible," Bruce murmured, adjusting settings on the quantum microscope. The compression technology preserved every molecular structure in perfect proportion. "I can see individual people moving inside." Clark leaned forward, eyes fixed on the tiny figures. "My people. Alive all this time." Tony manipulated a hologram, expanding a section of Kandor's central district. "The energy field sustaining them is unlike anything I've encountered. It's not just miniaturization, it's a complete dimensional fold, compressing space itself. Can they be restored?" Clark asked the question that had haunted him for weeks. Tony and Bruce exchanged glances. "Theoretically, yes," Bruce finally answered. "But the energy requirements would be astronomical. We'd need something like the Tesseract to power the expansion process. And even if we had that kind of power source," Tony added, "we'd need somewhere to put an entire city. The sudden appearance of millions of aliens would cause complications." Clark nodded, understanding the diplomatic understatement. Earth was still processing the existence of superhumans and recent alien encounters. An entire Kryptonian civilization would trigger global panic. "For now, they're stable," Bruce assured him. "The containment field is self-sustaining. They're not suffering or aware of their state." Clark stood, placing a hand on the dome gently. "My father told me I was sent here to give the people of Earth an ideal to strive toward. I never thought I'd have the chance to do the same for my own people." The laboratory door slid open, and Fury entered with his customary lack of ceremony. "We've got a situation." "Brainiac?" Clark asked immediately. "No, the containment's holding. This is something else." Fury activated a wall screen showing satellite imagery of the Arctic region near Superman's Fortress of Solitude. "Our sensors detected an anomalous energy surge in this area 2 hours ago. It's growing." The screen showed a swirling distortion in the air, like heat waves but more structured, with occasional flashes of strange light. "That's a Phantom Zone rupture," Clark said, recognizing the pattern instantly. But that's impossible. The Phantom Zone projector was destroyed with Krypton. Unless Brainiac's drones gathered enough data about your fortress to replicate the technology, Bruce suggested. Or someone recovered fragments of Brainiac's ship before we secured it, Fury finished grimly. Luthor, Clark's jaw tightened. He's been obsessed with Kryptonian technology for years. We don't have proof, Fury cautioned, but LexCorp's satellites have been unusually focused on that region lately. Clark was already moving toward the door. I need to get to the fortress, assess the rupture directly. Not alone, Fury countered. We don't know what might come through that breach. He's right, Tony agreed, shutting down his workstation. If this is a Phantom Zone rupture, and that place is full of Kryptonian criminals. Clark paused, the implications sinking in. Kryptonians with powers equal to his own, but without his moral restraint. Assemble the team. I'll meet you there. 20 minutes later, the Avengers Quinjet approached the Arctic coordinates while Superman flew alongside, scanning the area with his enhanced vision. The rupture's grown another 27% since Fury's briefing, he reported over comms. Energy signature is definitely Phantom Zone related, but something's not right. The pattern is irregular. Meaning? Steve asked from the pilot's seat. Meaning someone's forcing it open from the outside, not breaking out from within. The Phantom Zone projector was designed as a one-way system. So Luthor is trying to access the Phantom Zone deliberately. Natasha frowned. Why would anyone want to open an interdimensional prison? Knowledge, Bruce suggested. The zone was created by Kryptonians. Their technology would be centuries beyond ours. Or weapons, Tony added grimly. What better way to control a Superman than with something specifically designed to contain Kryptonians? Clark's expression darkened. We need to close that breach before. A massive pulse of energy suddenly erupted from the rupture, temporarily overwhelming even Superman's enhanced senses. When his vision cleared, the rupture had expanded dramatically, its edges now defined and stable, a doorway between dimensions. Something's coming through, he warned, accelerating toward the breach. The air before the rupture shimmered, and then a figure stepped through, a man in a black bodysuit with Kryptonian glyphs etched across its surface. His bearing was military, his expression coldly calculating as he surveyed his surroundings. General Zod, Clark whispered, recognizing him from Kryptonian historical records. Behind Zod, more figures emerged, 5 Kryptonians in similar attire, each moving with predatory grace as they oriented themselves on Earth. Last came a woman with regal posture who immediately took position at Zod's right hand. Approach with caution, Steve instructed over comms. Superman, can you communicate with them? Before Clark could respond, Zod's head snapped in his direction, enhanced senses already detecting his presence. The general's eyes narrowed, then widened in recognition of the symbol on Superman's chest. A survivor, Zod said in Kryptonian, voice carrying across the distance. The House of El endures. Clark descended slowly, maintaining a cautious distance. He replied in the same language, I am Kal-El, son of Jor-El. A flicker of emotion crossed Zod's face. Jor-El's son. The last natural birth on Krypton. He switched to perfect English, likely extracted from Clark's mind when their eyes met. Your father and I had our differences, but he was a great man. Does he live? Krypton was destroyed shortly after my departure, Clark answered in English for his teammates' benefit. I was raised on Earth. Zod's companions exchanged glances. The woman spoke, also in English now. So the prophecies of Rao were true. Krypton is gone. And you are all that remains of our race, Zod concluded, studying Superman with new intensity. Except for us. The Quinjet hovered nearby, weapon systems visibly powered down but ready. Zod glanced at it dismissively. Your human allies. Primitive, but courageous to approach beings of our power. They're Earth's defenders, Clark explained. As am I. Earth's defenders. Zod seemed amused. You defend humans. Why? This planet raised me. It's my home. Zod took a step forward. Your home was Krypton, Kal-El. Your allegiance belongs to your own people, the people I have spent lifetimes protecting. By attempting a military coup? Clark challenged. The historical records call you a war criminal. History is written by the victorious, Zod replied coldly. The council was corrupt, leading Krypton to its doom. I sought only to save our civilization. His expression softened slightly. As I do now. Steve's voice came through the comms. Keep him talking. We're scanning the breach for instabilities. Why did you come here? Clark asked, floating slightly closer. To find you, Zod answered simply. Brainiac's beacon reached us in the Phantom Zone. It contained coordinates for Earth and data confirming a Kryptonian presence. We used the last of our strength to focus on that beacon, weakening the barrier enough for your technology on this side to break through. Clark frowned. Our technology. We didn't open the breach. Then someone on your adopted world has technology they should not possess, the woman interjected. Pharaoh, she introduced herself with a slight incline of her head. Second Commander of Krypton's Defense Forces. Clark, Tony's voice came urgently through the comms. SHIELD just reported energy signatures matching LexCorp's satellites actively targeting the breach area. Luthor's definitely involved. Whoever opened the breach is irrelevant now, Zod dismissed. What matters is what comes next. He gestured to his companions. We are the last Kryptonians. Together, we can rebuild our civilization. On Earth? Clark asked warily. This planet has everything we need. Zod surveyed the icy landscape. Resources, space, a yellow sun to fuel our abilities. With Kryptonian technology, we could transform parts of this world into a new Krypton. There are over 7 billion humans already living here, Clark pointed out. And they would benefit from our leadership, Zod countered. Imagine it, Kal-El, a world without war, hunger, disease. Kryptonian science could elevate humans beyond their petty conflicts. Whether they want it or not. Zod's expression hardened slightly. Sometimes progress requires sacrifice. But that discussion can wait. He extended his hand. For now, I offer you brotherhood, Kal-El. The chance to know your true heritage, to live among your own kind. To no longer be alone. The offer struck a chord deeper than Clark wanted to admit. All his life, he'd been the only one of his kind, unique, isolated despite his connections to humanity. The prospect of Kryptonian companions who understood his experience was powerfully tempting. Sir, Steve interrupted over comms, we're detecting multiple incoming aircraft, LexCorp insignia. Zod's head tilted, hearing the communication with his enhanced senses. Your allies do not trust me. They're cautious, Clark replied. As am I. Your reputation precedes you, General. Then judge me by my actions here and now. Zod looked to the sky where the LexCorp aircraft were becoming visible. These humans approach with weapons. Allow me to demonstrate Kryptonian restraint. Before Clark could respond, LexCorp drones deployed from the aircraft, immediately firing energy weapons at the gathered Kryptonians. The beams, clearly designed with Kryptonian physiology in mind, emitted synthetic kryptonite radiation. Zod's companions scattered with superhuman speed, but Zod himself stood his ground, allowing a beam to strike him directly. He flinched slightly but remained standing. Primitive attempts to replicate kryptonite, he observed calmly. Ineffective against those who have endured the Phantom Zone. With a burst of speed, Zod flew toward the drones, destroying 3 with precise strikes before anyone could react. The remaining Kryptonians followed his lead, tearing through LexCorp's forces with effortless power. Superman, they're going to slaughter those people, Steve warned. Clark launched himself upward, intercepting THOR as she prepared to attack the main aircraft, likely containing human pilots. "Stop. These are still people. They attacked us first," she countered coldly, pushing past him. Clark grabbed her arm. "I can't let you kill them." THOR's eyes narrowed. "You would choose them over your own kind? Interesting." She moved with blinding speed, striking Superman with a combat technique he'd never encountered. Despite his power, he found himself momentarily disoriented by the precision of her attack. "Kryptonian martial arts," she explained, circling him. "Something your human upbringing couldn't teach you." The Quinjet moved into position, providing cover fire that distracted the other Kryptonians from the LexCorp aircraft, which were now retreating. Zod returned to hover near Clark and THOR. "Is this how it will be, Kal-El? You standing with humans against your own blood?" "I won't let anyone harm this planet," Clark replied firmly. "Kryptonian or human?" Something like disappointment flickered across Zod's face. "I had hoped for understanding. But perhaps you need time to remember who you truly are." He glanced at the rupture, which was still open but fluctuating. "We must stabilize our exit from the Phantom Zone. We will speak again soon, son of Jor-El, consider your allegiances carefully." With that, Zod and his followers retreated through the breach, which contracted behind them but remained partially open, a shimmering doorway between dimensions. "What just happened?" Tony asked, landing beside Superman as the Quinjet descended. "They've gone back to secure their exit route," Clark explained grimly. "The Phantom Zone breach is unstable. They need to ensure it remains open." "Why not stay here?" Natasha asked as she and the others disembarked from the jet. "Because they're not ready to make their move yet," Clark realized. Zod is a military strategist. He's assessing the situation, gathering intelligence. This was just first contact. "He seemed pretty interested in you," Steve observed. "I'm the only other Kryptonian outside the zone. He wants me on his side." "And are you tempted?" Bruce asked quietly. Clark turned to face his teammates, aware they were all watching for his answer. "They're my people," he admitted honestly. "But that doesn't mean I agree with Zod's methods or whatever he's planning." "Which is what exactly?" Tony pressed. "I don't know yet. But whatever opening that breach was supposed to accomplish, I don't think it went according to plan." Clark glanced at the pulsing rupture. "We need to close it permanently before more Kryptonians come through. Or we need to contain what's already here," Fury's voice came through their comms. LexCorp just issued a statement claiming their aircraft were performing routine Arctic surveillance when they were viciously attacked by extraterrestrial hostiles. "Luthor's already spinning this his way." "Of course he is," Clark muttered. "Superman," Steve said, using his codename deliberately, "where would Zod go? What would be his priority?" Clark considered the question. "He needs information, about Earth, its defenses, its power structures. He'll also want to establish a secure base of operations." A thought struck him. "The fortress. He'll try to access the Kryptonian database there." "Then that's where we go," Steve decided. "We secure your fortress and develop a plan to close that breach." As they prepared to move, Clark caught Bruce studying him with concern. "You okay?" Bruce asked privately. Clark shook his head slightly. "I spent my whole life believing I was the last. Now there are 6 more of my kind, all with my powers, all potentially hostile." He sighed. "And part of me still feels the pull of connection to them." "That's natural," Bruce assured him. "Just remember which connections matter most." Clark nodded, grateful for the understanding. As the team boarded the Quinjet, he took a final look at the breach, a doorway to a past he'd never known and a future suddenly uncertain. At the Fortress of Solitude, the crystalline structure hummed with energy as Superman led the Avengers inside. The team moved cautiously, weapons ready despite Superman's assurance that the fortress security systems would warn them of intruders. "This is," something else, Tony commented, examining the alien architecture. Puts my tower to shame. Clark approached the central crystal console. Jor-El, status report. A holographic figure materialized, an older man wearing Kryptonian robes, his bearing dignified yet kind. Kal-El. The fortress defenses detect no intrusions, but sensors indicate a phantom zone rupture nearby. This is most concerning. We know, Clark confirmed. General Zod and 5 other Kryptonians have already emerged. The hologram's expression grew grave. Zod was Krypton's greatest military leader before his attempted coup. His tactical genius is matched only by his conviction in Kryptonian superiority. What would he want on Earth? Steve asked, stepping forward. Jor-El's hologram regarded the human with interest. You must be the allies my son has chosen. He nodded approvingly before addressing Steve's question. Zod would seek to transform Earth into a new Krypton. His vision always involved expansion and supremacy. He believed Krypton should colonize other worlds rather than isolate itself. Transform how? Bruce asked, concern evident in his voice. Kryptonian terraforming technology could alter planetary atmospheres, gravity, and topography to match Krypton's original conditions, Jor-El explained. The process was theoretical in my time but would render Earth uninhabitable for humans. A heavy silence fell over the team as they processed the implications. The world engine, Clark murmured, remembering archives he'd studied. It was designed for lifeless planets, not inhabited ones. Correct, Jor-El confirmed. But Zod would consider this an acceptable sacrifice for Kryptonian resurrection. How do we stop them? Natasha asked bluntly. They all have Superman's powers. One Kryptonian nearly defeated an alien invasion single-handedly. How do we fight 6? With difficulty, Jor-El acknowledged. But not impossibility. Kryptonians under a yellow sun are powerful but not invulnerable. The right approach could neutralize them without casualties on either side. We're not looking to kill them, Steve clarified. Containment is the priority. Jor-El nodded. A wise approach, Captain. The Phantom Zone itself remains the most effective containment system for Kryptonians. If the breach could be reversed, we'd need control of whatever technology created it in the first place, Tony pointed out. Which is likely in Luthor's hands, Clark added grimly. The fortress suddenly pulsed with alarm signals. Jor-El's expression shifted to one of concern. Multiple Kryptonian energy signatures detected worldwide. They have begun their reconnaissance. Holographic displays appeared, showing satellite imagery of Kryptonians flying over major cities, Beijing, London, Moscow, and Washington, D.C. They're scouting our defenses, Steve realized. Identifying strategic targets. And sending a message, Clark added. Showing their power. Another alert sounded, more urgent than the first. The displays shifted to Washington, D.C., where THOR hovered above the Pentagon. Military forces had mobilized, with aircraft and ground-based weapons targeting her. This will not end well, Jor-El warned. Kryptonian powers against human weapons. On screen, THOR dodged missile fire with casual ease before using her heat vision to sever an aircraft's wing. As the plane began to fall, she allowed it to plummet halfway to the ground before catching it at the last second, a demonstration of both power and control. She's toying with them, Natasha observed. No, Clark corrected, she's making a point. Showing they could kill but are choosing not to. Yet. Similar scenes played out at the other locations, Kryptonians demonstrating overwhelming power while carefully avoiding human casualties. A calculated display of force. We need to respond before the military escalates this further, Steve decided. Split up and intercept. Superman, you take Washington, you're the only one who can match THOR. Tony, take London. Natasha and I will handle Moscow with local shield assets. Bruce. I know, Code green if absolutely necessary. Bruce nodded grimly. I'll coordinate from here with the fortress systems. As the team moved to deploy, Jor-El's hologram addressed Clark privately. My son, before you go. Zod was my friend once, before ambition corrupted him. He believes absolutely in his cause and will sacrifice anything for it, including you, should you stand in his way. I understand, Clark assured him. There is more. The Phantom Zone altered those imprisoned within it. Their powers under Earth's sun may manifest differently than yours, possibly stronger, possibly with unexpected variations. Be cautious. Clark nodded, the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. I will. Over Washington, D.C., Farah hovered before a formation of military aircraft, their weapons trained on her but not firing after her earlier demonstration. Your primitive defenses are admirable but futile, she called out, her voice somehow projecting to the pilots. We do not seek conflict with humanity. We seek only what belongs to us by right. And what would that be? Superman asked, arriving and positioning himself between Farah and the military forces. She smiled coldly. The future, Kal-El, something your father could never appreciate. Stand down, Farah. These people have done nothing to you. Yet they point weapons at me. She gestured dismissively. Your affection for humans is misplaced. They fear what they cannot control. With good reason, when faced with beings who could destroy their cities on a whim. Farah studied him with something like disappointment. You think like them now. Small. Fearful. You've forgotten the glory of Krypton. I never knew it, Clark countered. I was an infant when Krypton died. Then let us show you what you've missed. Her voice softened slightly. Zod offers you knowledge, purpose, belonging. Why do you resist your heritage? Because I know the cost. Zod's vision would sacrifice this entire world. Some worlds are worth more than others. Farah's expression hardened again. I had hoped to avoid this, for the sake of our race's future. She moved with blinding speed, closing the distance between them before Clark could react. Her fighting style was unlike anything he'd encountered, precise, efficient, clearly designed to combat other Kryptonians. Clark defended himself as best he could, but Farah's military training gave her an edge. She landed several powerful blows that sent him reeling. You have raw strength, she observed, continuing her assault, but no technique. You never learned proper Kryptonian combat. Clark managed to block her next strike, countering with a punch that connected solidly. I've learned a few things on Earth. The military forces, seeing Superman struggling, opened fire despite orders to hold position. Missiles streaked toward both Kryptonians. Humans, Farah sneered, easily evading the projectiles. Always interfering. She turned her attention to the aircraft, eyes glowing red as she prepared to use her heat vision. No. Superman intercepted her line of sight, taking the full force of her heat vision against his chest. The beam pushed him backward, his suit smoldering from the intensity. You would die for them? Farah asked, genuinely curious. If necessary, Clark replied, pushing forward against her beam. Impressive conviction. Misplaced, but impressive. Their standoff was interrupted by a voice in both their minds, Zod, communicating telepathically, another Kryptonian ability Clark had never mastered. Enough demonstration. Return to the gathering point. We have what we need. Farah ceased her attack immediately. Duty calls, Kal-El, consider this a preview of what awaits should you continue opposing us. Before Clark could respond, she accelerated upward at supersonic speed, breaking through the cloud layer and disappearing. Superman, you okay? Steve's voice came through his comms. Singed but fine, he replied, watching the military aircraft retreat cautiously. Farah just withdrew. Same on your end? Affirmative. The Kryptonian in Moscow just took off mid-confrontation. Tony reports the same from London. It was coordinated, Clark realized. They completed whatever reconnaissance they needed and pulled back simultaneously. Return to the fortress, Bruce instructed through comms. I've been analyzing the data, and we've got bigger problems than we thought. Back at the fortress, the team regrouped around the central console where Bruce had compiled information from global sensors and satellite imagery. The Kryptonians weren't just showing off, he explained, displaying a holographic map with highlighted locations. They were scanning specific sites, major power installations, military bases, and something else. He enhanced one section of the map. They paid particular attention to these locations. Those are Earth's largest deserts and uninhabited regions, Clark noted. The Sahara, the Australian outback, Antarctica. Prime locations for terraforming with minimal initial resistance, Tony concluded. Places they could start transforming without immediately affecting major population centers. That buys us some time, Steve observed. If they're planning a gradual approach rather than an immediate global assault. There's more, Bruce continued grimly. The Phantom Zone breach is growing again, becoming more stable. And I've detected energy signatures consistent with Kryptonian technology activating near the North Pole. The scout ship, Clark realized with alarm. There was another Kryptonian vessel frozen in the ice for centuries. I found it years ago but left it dormant when I recovered my pod. Not dormant anymore, Bruce confirmed. It's powering up. Zod must have accessed it. He's building a beachhead, Steve said, military training recognizing the strategy. Establishing a secure position with Kryptonian technology before launching his main assault. Which means we need to strike now, before they're fully established, Natasha argued. Clark shook his head. Going head-to-head against 6 Kryptonians at full power isn't a winning strategy. What about kryptonite? Tony suggested. The real stuff, not Luthor's synthetic version. There's very little on Earth, and what exists is mostly in Luthor's possession, Clark explained. We'd need his cooperation. Which brings us back to the breach technology, Bruce added. Our best option is still finding a way to send them back to the Phantom Zone. A shield alert interrupted their planning. Fury's face appeared on a secure channel. We've got a situation in Metropolis. Zod just landed in the middle of downtown and is publicly requesting Superman's presence. He's broadcasting worldwide. The display shifted to live footage from Metropolis Square, where Zod stood calmly amidst a crowd of terrified civilians and police with drawn weapons. His voice carried clearly through the microphones of news crews keeping a cautious distance. People of Earth. I am General Zod of Krypton. I come seeking Kal-El, known to you as Superman. I offer him kinship and purpose. I offer Earth advancement beyond your imagining. His voice hardened slightly. But I will not tolerate interference. You have 1 hour to ensure Superman receives this message. After that, I will demonstrate the cost of defiance. It's a trap, Steve said immediately. Obviously, Clark agreed. But I can't ignore it. He's surrounded by civilians. Which is exactly why he chose a public venue, Natasha pointed out. He's using human shields while claiming peaceful intentions. Clark was already moving toward the fortress exit. Trap or not, I need to respond. If I don't show up, he'll make good on his threat. We come with you, Steve insisted. At least as backup. No, Clark countered. He's expecting that. This needs to look like I'm considering his offer, coming alone to hear him out. Meanwhile, you find Luthor. If Zod is making his public move, something bigger is happening in the background. We need that breach technology. The team exchanged glances, clearly uncomfortable with the plan but recognizing its logic. 4 hours, Steve finally said. If we don't hear from you after 4 hours, we come in regardless of the situation. Clark nodded. Fair enough. As he prepared to depart, Tony approached with a small device. Take this. It looks like a Kryptonian communication crystal but contains an emergency beacon. If things go sideways, activate it. Thanks, Clark said, genuinely surprised by Tony's concern. Don't look so shocked, Boy Scout. I've almost started to like having you around. Tony's trademark smirk returned. Besides, if you get yourself killed, I'd have to build a whole new suit design for nothing. Clark landed in Metropolis Square 20 minutes later, his arrival causing a stir among the gathered crowds and media. Police had established a perimeter, but it was largely symbolic. No human force could stop a confrontation between Kryptonians. Zod stood in the center of the square, now accompanied by two of his followers. He smiled as Superman approached, appearing genuinely pleased. Kal-El. Thank you for coming. You didn't leave much choice, Clark replied, scanning the area for civilians at risk. Threatening innocent people isn't the best way to convince me of your peaceful intentions. A regrettable necessity. Your human allies have proven resistant to diplomatic overtures. Zod gestured to the police. Notice I have harmed no one, despite provocation. What do you want, Zod? To show you something. Something that might help you understand. He extended his hand. Will you come with me? Alone and unmonitored. Clark hesitated, aware of the risk but also of the opportunity to learn Zod's true plans. Where? The scout ship. It contains knowledge you should possess before making your final decision. Every tactical instinct warned against going, but Clark needed to see what Zod had discovered. He nodded slowly. Lead the way. Zod smiled and launched into the sky, expecting Superman to follow. Clark gave the watching crowds a reassuring nod before taking off after him. They flew north at supersonic speed, neither speaking until they reached the Arctic where the ancient Kryptonian scout ship now hummed with activity, its systems fully powered for the first time in centuries. As they landed, Clark noted significant changes. The ship had been partially excavated from the ice and reconfigured. Its interior glowed with familiar Kryptonian energy signatures. Impressive what can be accomplished in a few hours with proper technology, Zod commented, noting Clark's surprise. Come. Inside, the ship was transformed. Dormant systems were now active, displays showing Kryptonian script and diagrams. The remaining 4 Kryptonians worked at various stations, barely acknowledging their arrival. You've been busy, Clark observed. Preparing for our future, Zod confirmed, leading him to the central chamber. There, suspended in a restoration field, was a device Clark recognized from the archives, a world engine, the terraforming technology Jor-El had mentioned. You understand what this is? Zod asked, watching his reaction carefully. Terraforming technology. Designed to reshape planets to match Kryptonian environmental conditions. Very good. Zod circled the device proudly. This scout ship contained a smaller version, intended for preliminary transformation of colonial worlds. We've enhanced it using components salvaged from the Phantom Zone projector that brought us here. Luthor, Clark realized. He provided the technology to open the breach. An ambitious human, Zod acknowledged. He believes he's using us to eliminate you. We allow this belief while it serves our purpose. And what exactly is your purpose? Zod's expression grew solemn. The resurrection of Krypton, Kal-El. A second chance for our civilization. He activated a console, displaying a holographic simulation of Earth. The world engine will transform Earth's atmosphere and gravity to match Krypton's. Our stored genetic codex will allow us to repopulate our species. Within 1 generation, a new Kryptonian society will thrive here. Clark watched the simulation with growing horror as it showed Earth's transformation, oceans receding, atmosphere thickening with gases toxic to humans, gravity increasing beyond human tolerance. This would kill every human on the planet, he said quietly. Many would not survive the transition, Zod admitted without remorse. But billions died when Krypton perished. The mathematics of suffering favor our position. That's your justification, A numerical comparison of deaths. It is the logical calculation, Zod replied. One primitive species against the resurrection of an advanced civilization that spanned galaxies. The preservation of Kryptonian knowledge and culture that would otherwise be lost forever. Except it wouldn't be lost, Clark countered. I've preserved Krypton's knowledge in my fortress. And there's Kandor. Zod interrupted sharply. What about Kandor? Clark realized his mistake too late. Brainiac had it. The bottled city is intact. Zod's expression transformed with genuine emotion, hope and wonder breaking through his military discipline. Kandor survives. With Kryptonians inside? Yes. Millions of them, preserved in stasis. Where is it now? Zod demanded, suddenly intense. Secure, Clark answered carefully. Being studied to find a safe restoration method. Zod laughed, a sound of real joy. Don't you see, Kal-El? This changes everything. Not just a handful of us, but millions of our people can live again. He gripped Clark's shoulders. The world engine isn't just necessary now, it's essential. Kandor must have a Kryptonian world to return to. At the cost of Earth, Clark reminded him, stepping back. A price worth paying for the resurrection of an entire civilization. Zod's expression hardened. Your human sentimentality blinds you to the greater good. These people are primitive, violent, selfish. Krypton was approaching perfection, art, science, philosophy all in harmony. Until it destroyed itself through arrogance, Clark countered. The same arrogance you're displaying now. Zod's patience visibly thinned. I had hoped you would understand. That your Kryptonian blood would recognize the rightness of our cause. He sighed deeply. You've lived among humans too long, Kal-El. You've forgotten what it means to be Kryptonian. I haven't forgotten, Clark replied firmly. I honor Krypton by upholding its highest ideals, protection of life, respect for all sentient beings, advancement through cooperation rather than domination. Jor-El's idealism, Zod scoffed. The same idealism that failed to save our planet. And your militarism would repeat the same mistakes. Clark stood tall, decision made. I won't let you sacrifice Earth, Zod. Not even for Krypton. The general studied him for a long moment. Then you choose humanity over your own people. I choose life over genocide. There must be another way, one that allows both species to survive. There is no compromise in survival, Zod stated coldly. I take no pleasure in this, son of Jor-El. But the future of our race cannot be compromised, even for the last son of the House of El. He nodded to someone behind Clark. Before he could react, two Kryptonians seized him while a third activated a device that bathed him in red solar radiation, weakening him instantly. You will witness the rebirth of Krypton, Kal-El, Zod promised as Clark struggled against his captors. Perhaps, in time, you will understand the necessity of our actions. Clark fought against the weakening effect, but the concentrated radiation was overwhelming. His last conscious thought before darkness took him was of Earth, the planet he'd sworn to protect, now facing its greatest threat. In New York, Lois Lane hurried through the Daily Planet satellite office, dodging colleagues as she made her way to the conference room. The television showed Zod's public announcement and Superman's arrival in Metropolis, but the broadcast had cut off after they flew away together. Any update? She asked the room at large. Nothing, a junior reporter replied. They disappeared heading north. Military's tracking them but not releasing details. Lois checked her phone again, no messages from Clark. His silence worried her more than anything else. Since revealing his identity to her, they'd maintained constant communication during crises. Her phone suddenly rang, an unknown number. She answered immediately. Lois Lane. Ms. Lane, this is Captain Rogers. The voice was unmistakable, Captain America himself, calling her directly. I understand you're close with Superman. Lois moved to a quiet corner. You could say that. Where is he? That's why I'm calling. He's gone to meet with General Zod alone. We're concerned about the situation and need someone who knows him personally. What can I do? We're sending a car to your location. Be ready in 5 minutes. The line went dead before she could ask further questions. Lois grabbed her bag and jacket, pausing only to tell her editor she was following a lead on the Superman story. Outside, a black SUV with government plates pulled up precisely 5 minutes later. The door opened to reveal Natasha Romanoff in civilian clothes. Get in, she said without preamble. We don't have much time. As they drove, Natasha explained the situation, Zod's true plans, Clark's decision to confront him alone, and the team's effort to find Luthor's breach technology. So he's walking into a trap, Lois concluded grimly. Essentially. But he's not completely without backup. We've been monitoring from a distance, and Tony created an emergency beacon for him to activate if needed. And it hasn't been activated? Natasha's silence was answer enough. The SUV brought them to a private airfield where a Shield Quinjet waited, ramped down. Inside, Bruce Banner greeted them with a tense nod. Any update? Natasha asked him. Nothing good, Bruce replied, bringing up a holographic display. We've lost Superman's signal completely. And there's increased activity at the scout ship location. Energy readings are spiking dramatically. They're accelerating their timeline, Natasha realized. Probably because Superman didn't cooperate. What about the others? Lois asked. Captain Rogers, Stark. Meeting with Luthor, Bruce explained. Against my strong recommendation, I might add. But we need that breach technology, and Luthor's the only one who has it. The jet took off vertically, accelerating to supersonic speed once clear of the airfield. Lois watched the landscape blur beneath them, worry gnawing at her stomach. Why am I here? She finally asked. I'm a reporter, not a superhero. Natasha and Bruce exchanged glances before Bruce answered. Because you know him, the real him, both sides. If we find him compromised or conflicted about fighting his own people, you might be able to reach him when we can't. Plus, Natasha added with brutal honesty, if this goes completely sideways, humanity should have a witness. Someone who can tell the story properly. Lois absorbed this with a journalist's detachment, though her heart raced at the implications. You think we might lose? I think 6 Kryptonians with military training presents odds none of us are comfortable with, Natasha replied. Especially without Superman at full capacity. Bruce's monitoring equipment suddenly beeped urgently. New energy signatures, multiple locations globally. The display showed hotspots appearing in the Sahara Desert, the Indian Ocean, and central Brazil. They're deploying components of the World Engine, Bruce explained grimly. Beginning the terraforming process. Without Superman to stop them, they're moving ahead with the plan, Natasha concluded. How long before it affects populated areas? Lois asked. Hours, not days, Bruce replied. We need to find Clark. In LexCorp's Manhattan headquarters, Tony Stark and Steve Rogers sat across from Lex Luthor in his penthouse office. The tension in the room was palpable, with both Avengers making no effort to hide their distrust. Let me summarize, Luthor said, leaning back in his chair. Alien invaders you claim I helped release are now threatening to transform Earth, killing all humans in the process. And you want me to hand over the very technology that gives me leverage in this situation. His smile was coldly amused. How exactly is this a compelling offer? Because you'll die too, Tony pointed out bluntly. Unless your grand plan includes becoming Kryptonian yourself. My plan, Luthor replied smoothly, includes having countermeasures for every contingency. Including hostile Kryptonians. Yet your weapons were ineffective against them in the Arctic, Steve noted. They shrugged off your synthetic kryptonite like it was nothing. Initial prototypes, Luthor dismissed. The finalized versions are considerably more potent. Then use them, Steve challenged. If you have weapons that can stop the Kryptonians, deploy them now before more people die. Luthor's expression hardened. Captain, I admire your directness, but business doesn't work that way. My technology represents billions in research and development. I can't simply hand it over to government agents without appropriate compensation. Tony leaned forward, patience clearly fraying. What do you want, Luthor? Money? You're already richer than God. Power? The world's about to end if we don't stop Zod. There won't be anyone left to have power over. I want Superman, Luthor stated simply. Specifically, I want him neutralized. Permanently. Steve's jaw tightened. That's not happening. Then we have nothing further to discuss. Luthor stood, straightening his suit. Though I'm curious why Superman isn't handling this personally. Trouble in paradise? He's confronting Zod directly, Tony replied, watching Luthor closely. Trying to reason with him, Kryptonian to Kryptonian. A flash of genuine surprise crossed Luthor's face before he controlled it. Is he now? How predictable. The alien sympathizer choosing diplomacy over decisive action. He's buying us time, Steve corrected. Time we're wasting talking to you. Luthor walked to his window, gazing out over the city. For a moment, his calculated persona slipped, revealing something like genuine concern. You don't understand what Kryptonians are, he said quietly. What they represent. I've studied the historical records, pieced together fragments from ancient civilizations. Kryptonians visited Earth thousands of years ago. They were worshipped as gods, feared as demons. They shaped human development and then abandoned us when it suited them. He turned back to face the Avengers. Superman, Kal-El, is the advance guard of a species that sees humans as primitive, inferior. Zod is simply being honest about it while Superman plays benevolent protector. You're wrong about him, Steve stated firmly. Am I? Ask yourselves why an alien with godlike powers chooses to live among us, hiding in plain sight. What's his true agenda? What happens when he eventually realizes his full potential and decides humans are no longer worth protecting? We've worked with him, Tony countered. Fought beside him. He's earned our trust. For now. Luthor returned to his desk, pressing a button that revealed a hidden compartment. From it, he withdrew a small device. But I remain unconvinced. However, I'm not suicidal. Zod's plans would indeed destroy us all, which makes this a temporary alignment of interests. He placed the device on the desk. This controls the Phantom Zone breach. It can be reconfigured to create a new opening, one that could potentially draw the Kryptonians back in with the right energy signature. Why give it to us now? Steve asked suspiciously. Because my satellites have detected world engine components activating globally. The terraforming has begun. And because Superman appears to have failed to stop it. Luthor's expression was unreadable. Consider this a business investment in Earth's continued existence. Tony took the device, examining it carefully. This better work, Luthor. Oh, it works. Whether you can use it effectively is another matter entirely. Luthor smiled thinly. One more thing. My price for this technology is access to any Kryptonian artifacts recovered afterward. Specifically, anything related to their terraforming capabilities. That's not our call to make, Steve replied. Then consider it a gentleman's agreement between potential allies. Luthor extended his hand. After all, if we survive this, Earth will need better defenses against the next alien threat. My technology combined with Kryptonian science could provide that security. Steve ignored the outstretched hand. We'll discuss terms after Earth is saved. As they prepared to leave, Luthor called after them. Captain, Mr. Stark. When you find Superman, if you find him, ask yourself this, where do his true loyalties lie? With the humans who raised him, or with the Kryptonians who share his blood and power? Clark awoke in a Kryptonian containment field, red solar radiation keeping his powers suppressed. The scout ship hummed with activity around him, Zod's followers working with focused urgency. The terraforming has begun, Zod informed him, approaching the containment field. Soon Earth's atmosphere will transform to match Krypton's. The process is irreversible once it reaches critical stage. Clark struggled against his restraints. You're committing genocide, Zod. I'm ensuring our species' survival. Zod studied him with something like regret. You could have been part of this rebirth, Kal-El. A leader in our new world. Not at this price. The price is necessary. Kandor citizens cannot survive in Earth's current environment. When we restore them, they will need a Kryptonian atmosphere. There must be another solution, Clark insisted. One that doesn't sacrifice an entire species. There isn't. I've calculated every possibility. Zod's expression hardened. This is why the Council forbade emotional attachments in our genetic programming. They cloud judgment, create hesitation where decisiveness is required. Or they provide perspective you're lacking, Clark countered. Compassion isn't weakness, Zod. It's strength. A human sentiment. Zod turned away. The world engine reaches critical mass in 6 hours. After that, Earth's transformation cannot be stopped. You will remain here, protected from the atmospheric changes, to witness the dawn of new Krypton. As Zod moved to leave, Clark called after him. My father believed Krypton died because our people lost their soul in the pursuit of perfection. Don't prove him right by sacrificing your humanity. I never had humanity to sacrifice, Kal-El. I was engineered without it. Zod paused at the doorway. That is the difference between us. You were born free of Krypton's constraints. I was created to be its sword. After Zod left, Clark tested his restraints again, finding no weakness. The red solar radiation continued sapping his strength, leaving him as vulnerable as any human. Minutes stretched into an hour as he watched the Kryptonians monitor the world engine's progress on displays around the chamber. Earth's atmosphere was already showing changes in the affected regions, strange cloud formations and gravitational anomalies visible on the screens. Clark closed his eyes, focusing his mind as he'd learned in the fortress. Even without his powers, he could center himself, find clarity. He thought of his parents in Smallville, of his teammates, of Lois. Humans who had shown him what it truly meant to belong somewhere. Earth wasn't just his adopted home, it was where he had found his purpose, his identity beyond the legacy of Krypton. A sudden commotion outside the ship caught his attention. Alarms activated as Kryptonians rushed to defensive positions. Perimeter breach, one announced. Human aircraft approaching from multiple vectors. Military response, another reported. Primitive weapons, no threat to our shields. Engage defense systems but do not counterattack, Zod ordered, returning to the chamber. Unnecessary casualties will only complicate the transition. Clark strained to see the displays, catching glimpses of what appeared to be a coordinated military assault, aircraft and ground forces converging on the scout ship's position. A pointless gesture, Zod commented, noticing Clark's interest. Their weapons cannot penetrate Kryptonian technology. Don't underestimate human determination, Clark warned. I respect their will to survive, Zod replied. It mirrors our own. The ship shuddered suddenly as something struck it with unexpected force. Impact on the western quadrant, a Kryptonian reported with surprise. Shield integrity holding but power fluctuation detected. Impossible, Zod muttered, moving to the display. What weapon could, he didn't finish as another impact struck, more powerful than the first. The ship's lights flickered momentarily. It appears, Clark said with a smile forming, my friends have arrived. Outside, the Hulk roared as he delivered another devastating blow to the scout ship's shields, the impact creating visible energy ripples across the protective barrier. Iron Man flew overhead, targeting shield generators with precision strikes while Captain America coordinated military forces from a command position. Shields at 87% and dropping, Tony reported. Bruce is making quite the impression. Keep the pressure on, Steve ordered. We need to create an opening for the infiltration team. Aboard the Quinjet hovering at a safe distance, Natasha prepared for her part of the mission. Assuming we can breach the shields, where do we find Superman inside that thing? The central chamber, Lois replied confidently, studying the holographic blueprint Bruce had provided before transforming into the Hulk. That's where they'd keep prisoners in Kryptonian design philosophy, at the heart of the structure, most defensible position. You've done your homework, Natasha observed, impressed despite herself. I've been investigating Superman for years, Lois replied with a small smile. Before I knew who he really was. The ship rocked as another explosion flashed against the Kryptonian shields. That's our cue, Natasha announced, moving toward the ramp. Breach team, prepare for insertion. Inside the scout ship, Zod assessed the situation with military efficiency. Impressive adaptation of human weapons. They've combined their technology with Chitauri components salvaged from the New York battle. Sir, the world engine synchronization is destabilizing under the attack, reported one of his officers. The terraforming sequence needs to be adjusted to compensate. Make it happen, Zod ordered. Faura, take Namek and repel the human forces. Non-lethal measures if possible, but the world engine must be protected at all costs. As two Kryptonians departed to engage the attackers, Zod turned to Clark. Your friends show admirable courage. Misguided, but admirable. It's not misguided to defend your home, Clark replied, feeling a surge of pride as he watched the Avengers coordinating their assault with military precision. On the displays, he could see Faura and Namek emerging from the ship, immediately engaging the human forces. Faura targeted Iron Man, moving at supersonic speed to slam into him mid-flight. Namek confronted the Hulk directly, the two titans colliding with earth-shaking force. Kryptonian warriors against Earth's mightiest, Zod observed. A preview of conflicts to come if we allowed humans to survive alongside us. They would never accept Kryptonian authority. They're not fighting authority, Clark countered. They're fighting extinction. The ship rocked again, more violently this time. Warning signals flashed across control panels. Shield breach in Sector 4, a Kryptonian announced with alarm. Human infiltrators detected inside the perimeter. Zod frowned. Impossible. No human technology could breach our shields. Unless, Clark suggested, they had help from someone who understands Kryptonian technology. Recognition dawned on Zod's face. Luthor. Outside, the battle intensified. The Hulk and Namek traded devastating blows, their combat creating shockwaves that shattered ice for miles around. Namek had superior technique, but the Hulk's rage-fueled strength kept increasing with each impact. The Green One grows stronger, Namek reported to Faura via their communication link. His biology adapts to our attacks. Focus on containment rather than victory, Faura instructed while dodging repulsor blasts from Iron Man. We need only delay them until the world engine reaches critical mass. Inside the ship's perimeter, Natasha led a small team of SHIELD operatives through maintenance corridors, following the route Lois had identified from the blueprints. Behind them came Lois herself, against all tactical advice but refusing to be left behind. Life signs ahead, Natasha warned, checking a specialized scanner. 2 Kryptonians guarding the central junction. How do we get past them? A SHIELD agent whispered. We can't match their strength. Natasha removed a device from her tactical gear, one of Luthor's prototypes. We don't have to. This emits a focused pulse of synthetic kryptonite radiation. It won't stop them completely, but it should disorient them long enough for us to slip past. And if it doesn't? Lois asked pragmatically. Then we improvise, Natasha replied with a grim smile. Stay behind me. In the central chamber, Zod monitored both the battle outside and the world engine's progress. The primary nodes have reached 40% synchronization. 2 more hours until the process becomes self-sustaining. Clark continued testing his restraints, looking for any weakness. The red solar radiation had weakened him substantially, but he could feel his connection to Earth's yellow sun still present, just suppressed. "You won't succeed," he told Zod. "Even if you defeat the Avengers, Earth has other defenders. They won't stop fighting. Their resistance is expected but ultimately futile," Zod replied. "Once the atmosphere begins changing, human military effectiveness will decrease exponentially. Within days, they'll be struggling simply to breathe." A sudden alarm blared through the chamber. "Intruders approaching Central Section," announced the monitoring system. "Impossible," Zod muttered, drawing a Kryptonian weapon. "No human should have penetrated this far." The chamber doors exploded inward as a flashbang device detonated, followed immediately by Natasha rolling through the smoke, firing widow's bites at the nearest Kryptonian. The electrical charges had little effect, but the distraction allowed S.H.I.E.L.D. agents to deploy Luthor's kryptonite pulse emitters. The Kryptonians staggered as the green energy washed over them, not incapacitated but clearly discomfort. Natasha used the opening to target the containment field controls, disabling them with precise shots. As the field collapsed, Clark fell forward, still weakened by the red solar exposure. Lois rushed to his side, helping him stand. "Perfect timing," he managed with a weak smile. "Always," she replied, supporting his weight. "Can you move?" Getting stronger by the second, he assured her, already feeling his powers beginning to return as the red solar effect dissipated. But not fast enough. Across the chamber, Zod recovered from the kryptonite pulse, his military training allowing him to push through the discomfort. With superhuman speed, he seized one of the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, using him as a shield while targeting Natasha with his heat vision. Clark reacted instinctively, pushing Lois aside and throwing himself into the path of the beam. The heat vision struck him directly, burning through his already damaged suit and searing his still vulnerable skin. "Clark!" Lois cried out as he collapsed. "Get him out of here," Natasha ordered, continuing to engage Zod with everything in her arsenal. "We'll cover your retreat." 2 S.H.I.E.L.D. agents moved to help Lois with Clark, but Zod was faster. He knocked Natasha aside with a casual backhand and intercepted them, seizing Clark by the throat. "You will not interfere with Krypton's resurrection," he growled, tightening his grip. "Let him go," Lois demanded, grabbing a fallen kryptonite emitter and activating it directly in Zod's face. The general recoiled from the concentrated radiation, dropping Clark, who gasped for breath. "You humans are persistent," Zod acknowledged, his expression darkening with fury. "But persistence without power is merely delay." He advanced on Lois, seemingly intent on eliminating this human who had dared challenge him. Clark, still recovering but feeling his strength returning more rapidly now, forced himself between them. "Your quarrel is with me, Zod. Not her. My quarrel is with anyone who stands against Krypton's future." Zod studied him with genuine confusion. "Why do you protect them with such devotion? These fragile, primitive beings who fear and mistrust you?" "Because they taught me something Krypton had forgotten," Clark replied, standing straighter as his powers continued returning. "The value of choice. Of free will. Every human life represents unlimited potential, not because of power or predefined purpose, but because they can choose their own path." A romantic notion, Zod dismissed. But impractical for species survival. "It's what makes them worth saving," Clark insisted. "Worth fighting for." Outside, the battle had escalated dramatically. THOR and Iron Man traded blows at supersonic speeds above the Arctic landscape while the Hulk and Namek's confrontation had carved a new canyon in the ice. Military forces maintained distance, providing supporting fire that, while ineffective against Kryptonians directly, helped disrupt their movements and visibility. Captain America had penetrated the ship's perimeter, fighting his way through corridors with tactical precision, his shield proving surprisingly effective against Kryptonian attackers, its unique vibranium composition partially resistant to their strength. Status on Superman, he demanded through comms while deflecting a Kryptonian energy blast. We found him, Natasha replied, the sound of combat clear in her transmission. But extraction is complicated. Zod is personally preventing our retreat. Hold position. Reinforcements incoming. Inside, Clark felt his strength surging back, not yet at full capacity, but enough to take a stand. He stepped forward, fists clenched. Last chance, Zod. Shut down the world engine. We'll find another solution for Kandor, one that doesn't require sacrificing Earth. There is no other solution, Zod replied, his own posture shifting to combat readiness. And you are in no condition to make demands. They collided with thunderous force, the impact shattering nearby control panels and sending shockwaves through the chamber. Though still weakened, Clark fought with everything he had, drawing on years of experience battling threats to Earth. Zod countered with military precision, each strike calculated for maximum effect. Your technique is unrefined, emotional, he criticized between blows. You fight like a human. I take that as a compliment, Clark replied, landing a solid punch that staggered Zod momentarily. The ship's systems suddenly blared with urgent alarms. On the remaining functional displays, the world engine components showed unexpected power fluctuations. The synchronization is destabilizing, one of Zod's officers reported. Someone is interfering with the secondary nodes. Zod glanced at the display, momentarily distracted. Clark seized the opportunity, tackling him through a structural wall and into an adjacent chamber, the scout ship's power core. You're losing, Zod, Clark stated, feeling his strength increasing by the minute as he absorbed more yellow solar energy. Earth is fighting back on all fronts. Temporary setbacks, Zod snarled, recovering quickly. The process has already begun. The atmosphere is changing as we speak. Their combat resumed with increased intensity, both Kryptonians now fighting at speeds barely visible to human eyes. Each impact created small shockwaves that damaged the ship's systems further. In the central chamber, Natasha had regrouped with the SHIELD team, setting up a defensive position around Lois and the injured agents. We need to target the world engine controls, Lois suggested, pointing to a crystalline console that remained intact. That's the primary interface for the terraforming sequence. How do you know that? Natasha asked, impressed again. I studied the Kryptonian language after meeting Superman, Lois explained, indicating the symbols on the console. That says, Genesis Protocol, their term for planetary transformation. Natasha nodded and directed her team to the console. Plant the disruptors there. Let's shut this thing down. Captain America burst into the chamber, shield first, just as the SHIELD agents placed specialized EMP devices on the world engine controls. Nice of you to join us, Natasha greeted him. Traffic was terrible, Steve replied dryly, assessing the situation. Superman. Fighting Zod in the power core, Lois informed him, pointing to the breach in the wall. But we've got bigger problems. The world engine has already started changing Earth's atmosphere. Steve nodded grimly. Tony's trying to disable the external components, but they're heavily defended. Our best shot is shutting it down from here. He turned to Natasha. Activate the disruptors. The EMP devices powered up, releasing concentrated electromagnetic pulses calibrated to Kryptonian technology. The world engine console sparked and flickered, its crystalline structure cracking under the assault. It's working, Lois observed as the displays showed the terraforming process destabilizing. The synchronization is failing. In the power core, Clark and Zod both felt the ship shudder as systems began failing. Zod's expression transformed from confidence to fury. What have you done? He demanded, redoubling his attack. Given Earth a fighting chance, Clark replied, matching his intensity. Their battle had escalated to full Kryptonian power now, heat vision countering heat vision, super strength against super strength. The ship structure groaned under the strain of their combat. "You're a traitor to your race," Zod accused, landing a blow that sent Clark crashing into the power core's containment field. "Choosing humans over your own kind." "I'm choosing life over destruction," Clark countered, recovering quickly. "There's a difference." The power core pulsed erratically as their combat damaged its regulatory systems. Warning signals flashed throughout the ship. "Core destabilizing," announced the automated system. "Breach imminent. Evacuate immediately." "Now you've doomed us all," Zod snarled. "Without the scout ship, the world engine cannot complete its sequence." "That was the idea," Clark confirmed, pressing his advantage as Zod's fury made his attacks less disciplined. Outside, the situation had shifted dramatically. The world engine components worldwide began shutting down as their connection to the master control failed. Faura and Namek suddenly broke off combat, responding to some unseen communication. "They're retreating," Tony reported, watching Faura streak toward the scout ship. "Something's changed. The ship's power core is destabilizing," Steve explained through comms. "We need immediate evacuation of all personnel." In the central chamber, SHIELD agents were already assisting the wounded toward exit points. Natasha approached Lois, who remained fixated on the breach where Clark had disappeared. "We need to go," Natasha urged. "This place is coming apart." "Not without Clark," Lois insisted. "He can handle himself," Steve assured her, joining them. "Our priority is getting non-powered personnel to safety." A massive explosion rocked the ship before Lois could argue further. The power core's containment had begun to fail, releasing bursts of exotic energy throughout the structure. In the core chamber, Clark and Zod fought amidst increasing chaos, neither willing to concede despite the imminent danger. "You've sacrificed our future," Zod accused, grappling with Clark amid floating debris as the ship's artificial gravity fluctuated. "Candor will never be restored." "We'll find another way," Clark promised. "One that preserves both worlds." "There is no other way." Zod roared, his composure finally shattering. "That was always your father's failure, believing in impossible ideals rather than necessary action." The core pulsed violently, bathing both Kryptonians in energy that momentarily disrupted their powers. Zod seized the opportunity to break away, flying toward the ship's command center. "Zod!" Clark called, pursuing him. "The ship's going to explode. We need to evacuate everyone." "Precisely my intention," Zod replied without slowing. "But not for the reasons you think." Clark followed him to the command center, where Zod accessed the main navigation system. To Clark's horror, he recognized the coordinates being entered: Metropolis. "What are you doing?" Clark demanded. "If Earth cannot be transformed, it will serve as a warning to the galaxy," Zod replied coldly. "The destruction of its greatest city will be Krypton's final statement." "You can't," Clark realized Zod's plan with dawning horror. "The ship's core is destabilizing. If it detonates in a populated area, millions will die," Zod confirmed. "A fitting memorial to Krypton's fall." Clark lunged for the controls, but Zod intercepted him. Their renewed combat shook the command center as the ship's engines powered up, beginning its ascent despite the deteriorating core. "Evacuate now." Steve ordered over all channels as the ship broke free from the ice. "It's taking off." The remaining SHIELD personnel rushed for exit points, Captain America ensuring everyone made it out. Natasha practically dragged Lois toward an escape hatch. "Clark's still in there," Lois protested. "And he'd want you safe," Natasha countered firmly. Outside, Tony tracked the rising ship with growing concern. "That thing's trajectory is locked on Metropolis," he reported. "And its power core is approaching critical mass." "Nuclear yield?" Steve asked as he emerged from the ship with the last evacuees. "Worse. It's exotic Kryptonian energy." could level half the eastern seaboard. Inside the ascending ship, Clark fought with renewed desperation, knowing millions of lives hung in the balance. Zod matched him blow for blow, his military training compensating for Clark's slightly greater power. "You can't win, Kal-El," Zod taunted. "Even if you defeat me, the ship is locked on course. Nothing can stop it now." Clark knew he was right, the navigation system was too damaged to override. There was only one option left. "Then I'll have to bring it down before it reaches Metropolis," he declared. Breaking away from the combat, Clark flew to what remained of the power core. The containment field was already failing, exotic energy spilling out in dangerous bursts. "What are you doing?" Zod demanded, following him. "What my father would have done," Clark replied. "Protecting the innocent at any cost." He plunged his hands into the core's regulatory system, using his remaining strength to accelerate the breakdown. The core pulsed violently, energy cascading throughout the ship. "You'll die with it," Zod warned, realizing Clark's intention. "If that's what it takes." Zod hesitated, something like respect flickering across his features. "You truly are Jor-El's son." Then his expression hardened again. "But I cannot allow Krypton to end this way." He attacked again, trying to pull Clark away from the core. Their final battle raged amid increasing energy discharges, the ship shuddering as systems failed catastrophically around them. Outside, the Avengers and military forces watched with mounting concern as the ship rose higher, accelerating toward its target. "Superman's still aboard," Tony reported, scanning the vessel. "Along with Zod. The others have abandoned ship." "Can we shoot it down?" a military commander asked. "Not without risking the core detonating," Bruce replied, having returned to human form. "And it's already too high for conventional weapons." "What about unconventional weapons?" Tony suggested, an idea forming. "Luthor's device, the one that controls the Phantom Zone breach. Could it work on a ship?" Bruce considered this. "Theoretically, if we could generate a localized breach directly in the ship's path. We'd need to get close enough to target it precisely," Tony pointed out. "And someone would have to activate the device manually." "I'll do it," Tony decided immediately. "My suit can handle the radiation long enough to place the device." "It's a one-way trip, Tony," Steve warned. "At that altitude, with that level of radiation, if you've got a better idea, I'm all ears, Cap." Tony's faceplate snapped down. "Otherwise, we're on the clock." Inside the ship, Clark had managed to fully destabilize the core. Alarms blared throughout the vessel as critical systems failed. "Core breach imminent," announced the automated system. "Detonation in 60 seconds. Zod finally broke off his attack, accepting defeat. "You've won this round, son of El. But it changes nothing. Earth remains vulnerable, and Kandor remains trapped." "We'll find another way," Clark insisted. "Without genocide." "Such optimism," Zod remarked, almost sadly. "Another quality you inherited from your father." He moved toward an escape pod. "Perhaps we'll continue this discussion another time." "There won't be another time," Clark stated firmly. "You're not escaping to threaten Earth again." Zod paused. "Would you really condemn the last of your kind to death? Ensure Krypton's final extinction?" The question struck deep, making Clark hesitate just long enough for Zod to access the escape pod. But instead of entering it himself, Zod sealed Clark inside with a swift movement. "What are you doing?" Clark demanded, struggling against the closing door. "Ensuring Krypton's legacy continues," Zod replied, his voice carrying through the pod's communication system. "One of us must survive, Kal-El. Your compassion makes you weak, but it also makes you worthy of carrying our heritage forward." "Zod, don't do this." Clark pounded against the pod's interior as it prepared for launch. "Find a better way, son of Jor-El," Zod said, his voice surprisingly sincere. "Prove your father right. Prove me wrong." The pod ejected from the ship, propelling Clark away from the doomed vessel. Through the viewport, he watched in disbelief as Zod remained aboard, making no attempt to escape. Core detonation in 10 seconds, came the final automated warning. Outside, Tony approached the ship at maximum velocity, the Phantom Zone device primed and ready. Almost in position, he reported. 5 seconds to optimal targeting. Suddenly, an escape pod ejected from the vessel, streaking away at high speed. "We've got an ejection," Natasha observed from the ground. "Signature matches Superman." "What about Zod?" Steve asked. "Still aboard," Tony confirmed, reaching his target position. "Activating the device now." The Phantom Zone breach generator powered up, creating a swirling distortion in the air directly in the ship's path. The tear in reality expanded rapidly, its edges defined by crackling energy. Aboard the ship, Zod watched the approaching breach with grim acceptance. "For Krypton," he murmured as the vessel plunged into the dimensional rift. The scout ship disappeared into the Phantom Zone just as its core reached critical mass. A blinding flash marked the transition, followed by a shockwave that rippled through the atmosphere but caused no significant damage as the explosion occurred in another dimension. The breach collapsed behind the ship, sealing itself as the generator burned out from the strain. "Target contained," Tony reported, his suit systems flickering from proximity to the dimensional energy. "Breach closed. I'm losing power but should make a controlled descent." On the ground, all eyes turned to the falling escape pod, which crashed into the Arctic ice several miles from their position. Captain America immediately organized a recovery team, racing toward the impact site. They found the pod cracked open, Superman standing beside it, his expression unreadable as he stared at the sky where the ship had vanished. "Clark," Steve approached cautiously. "Are you all right?" Clark turned to him, conflicting emotions evident in his eyes. "Zod sacrificed himself. He could have escaped, but he put me in the pod instead." "Why would he do that?" Steve asked, genuinely confused. "To ensure Krypton's legacy survived." Clark looked back at the sky. "In his own way, he was trying to save our race." "By destroying Earth," Steve reminded him gently. "Yes." Clark nodded. "His methods were wrong, monstrous, even. But his goal." He trailed off, struggling to articulate the complex emotions. "He wanted the same thing I want, for Krypton to live on. We just saw different paths to that future." Steve placed a hand on his shoulder. "The hardest part of war isn't fighting enemies we hate. It's fighting those whose motivations we understand." Clark nodded, grateful for the understanding. "What about the world engine components?" "Shutting down globally," Steve confirmed. "The atmospheric changes have already begun reversing. Earth will recover." "And the other Kryptonians?" "Disappeared when the ship entered the breach. SHIELD is monitoring for any signs of their return, but it appears they've retreated to regroup." Clark absorbed this information silently, his gaze drifting to the horizon where a Quinjet approached, likely carrying Lois. The sight brought focus back to his thoughts. "We should help with cleanup," he decided, straightening his shoulders. "And then we need to figure out what to do about Candor. Those people deserve a chance at life, without costing Earth its future." Steve nodded, recognizing the shift from grief to determination. "One problem at a time. Let's get you back to the team first." 2 weeks later, the Avengers gathered in the tower's common room, the atmosphere noticeably lighter than it had been since the crisis began. On the television, news reports showed global recovery efforts progressing smoothly, with atmosphere and weather patterns returning to normal. "Luthor's taking credit for saving the world," Tony remarked, gesturing at footage of Lex at a press conference. Claiming his proprietary technology was instrumental in the Avengers' success. "Let him have the publicity," Steve replied. "We know what really happened." Clark sat somewhat apart from the others, watching the coverage with a pensive expression. Since the battle, he'd been quieter, more introspective, processing the complex emotions of fighting his own kind and witnessing Zod's final sacrifice. "How's the research on candor coming?" he asked, turning to Bruce and Tony. "Progress is slow but promising," Bruce reported. "We've identified an energy signature that might allow controlled expansion without requiring a complete planetary transformation. The real challenge is location," Tony added. "Even at minimum size, a restored candor would be roughly the equivalent of Chicago. Not something we can just drop anywhere without significant geopolitical complications." "What about space?" Natasha suggested. "The Moon, Mars, somewhere Kryptonians could build their own world without displacing humans." "Potentially viable," Bruce agreed. "Though the technology to create a sustainable environment would be centuries beyond current Earth capabilities." "But not beyond Kryptonian science," Clark pointed out. "If we could restore even a portion of candor, their scientists could help develop the necessary systems." The conversation paused as the elevator doors opened, revealing Lois Lane with a visitor's badge. "Sorry I'm late," she said, moving immediately to Clark's side. "Perry had me rewriting the Kryptonian aftermath piece 3 times. Apparently, Earth narrowly escapes alien terraforming, needs a human angle." "Did you find one?" Steve asked with a smile. "I focused on the recovery efforts," Lois replied. "Regular people helping rebuild after atmospheric anomalies damaged infrastructure. Humanity at its best." Clark took her hand, drawing strength from her presence. Since revealing his identity to her, their relationship had deepened significantly. She'd become not just his confidant but his anchor, helping him navigate the complex aftermath of confronting his Kryptonian heritage. "Any word from our bald friend?" Tony asked, changing the subject. "Luther's been surprisingly quiet beyond the PR campaign," Natasha reported. "SHIELD's monitoring shows LexCorp has increased research in alien defense technology, but nothing immediately concerning." "He'll be back," Clark said with certainty. This experience only confirmed his beliefs about extraterrestrial threats. "One problem at a time," Steve reminded him, echoing his words from the Arctic. The team settled into comfortable conversation, discussing lighter matters, training schedules, tower improvements, a charity event Tony was organizing. Gradually, Clark felt the weight of recent events lifting slightly. Here, among humans who had fought beside him, who understood both his power and his vulnerability, he found a sense of belonging that transcended species. Later, on the tower's rooftop balcony, Clark and Lois stood watching the sunset over Manhattan. The cityscape glittered as lights came on across buildings, life continuing its normal rhythm despite how close the world had come to transformation. "Penny for your thoughts," Lois said, leaning against him. "Just thinking about belonging," Clark replied. "All my life, I felt caught between worlds, not fully human, but knowing nothing of Krypton except what the archives taught me. And now? Now I've met real Kryptonians. Fought them. Lost the last connection to my birth world when Zod chose to save me." He sighed. "It should provide closure, but instead, I have more questions than ever." Lois considered this. Maybe that's how it should be. Questions keep us moving forward, searching for better answers. Zod believed he had all the answers, Clark observed. Absolute certainty in his purpose and methods. "And look where that led him," Lois countered. "Your human side, your capacity to doubt, to question, to feel conflicted, that's what makes you different from him. Better than him." Clark smiled slightly. "That sounds like something my mother would say." "Smart woman." Lois turned to face him directly. "You know, when I first learned who you really were, I worried that Clark Kent was just a disguise, that Superman was the real you. And now? Now I understand that neither identity is more real than the other. They're both you, the power and the vulnerability, the confidence and the doubt. The Kryptonian and the human." She took his hand. "Your strength comes from embracing both, not choosing between them." Clark considered her words, finding truth in them that resonated with his own emerging understanding. When I was trapped in that pod, watching Zod sacrifice himself, I realized something. He died believing he was preserving Krypton's future. But Krypton's true legacy isn't in terraforming planets or rebuilding its civilization exactly as it was. What is it, then? It's in taking the best of what Krypton created, its knowledge, its achievements, its potential, and helping it evolve into something new. Something that works in harmony with Earth rather than replacing it. Clark gazed at the city below. Maybe that's what my father meant about giving Earth an ideal to strive toward, not imposing Kryptonian ways, but offering a bridge between worlds. Lois smiled. Now you sound like a journalist, always looking for the bigger story. I learned from the best, he replied, returning her smile. Their moment was interrupted by Tony's voice through the tower's communication system. Sorry to break up the romantic rooftop scene, but we've got something you'll want to see, Boy Scout. In the laboratory, Bruce and Tony had assembled the team around the containment unit holding candor. New equipment surrounded the miniaturized city, complex energy fields monitoring every aspect of the tiny metropolis. We've established communication, Bruce announced as Clark and Lois entered. Very primitive, using quantum fluctuations to exchange simple data packets, but it's a start. You can talk to them? Clark asked, hope evident in his voice. Not conversation, Tony clarified. More like Morse code. But we've confirmed they're aware of their situation and that they've been in a kind of stasis, conscious but with time perception significantly altered. What have you told them? That they're safe, that Krypton is gone, and that you survived, Bruce replied gently. We thought you might want to communicate directly. Clark approached the containment unit, placing his hand carefully on the dome. How? Tony handed him a small device. This translates thoughts into quantum patterns they can interpret. Simple concepts work best. Clark closed his eyes, focusing on the device as he had been instructed. He projected feelings of safety, hope, and promise. A sense that they were not forgotten, that their civilization would continue, that a future existed where Kryptonians and humans might live together. The city within the dome seemed to pulse with light in response, buildings illuminating in patterns that conveyed acknowledgement. They understand, Bruce confirmed, monitoring the quantum exchanges. They're responding with gratitude, I think. And patience. Clark opened his eyes, a profound sense of purpose settling over him. Here was his true heritage, not in conquest or transformation, but in preservation and progress. Not in isolation, but in connection. We'll find a way to restore them, he promised. A way that honors both worlds. Steve stepped forward. And you won't do it alone. That's what teams are for. Clark looked around at the assembled Avengers, humans who had fought alongside him against his own kind, who had risked their lives to save a planet that Zod had dismissed as primitive and unworthy. In their determination, their courage, their unwillingness to surrender even against godlike power, he saw everything that made Earth worth protecting. Thank you, he said simply, words inadequate for the depth of his gratitude. Don't get sentimental on us, Soups, Tony quipped, though his expression betrayed his own emotion. We've got work to do. Planets to save, cities to restore, the usual Tuesday stuff. The team laughed, tension breaking as they began discussing next steps and potential solutions. Clark felt Lois slip her hand into his, anchoring him in the moment. So, she asked quietly, still feeling caught between worlds. He considered the question, watching his teammates, his friends, as they worked together, combining human ingenuity with Kryptonian knowledge in ways neither civilization could have achieved alone. No, he replied with growing certainty. I'm exactly where I belong. Outside, night had fallen completely over New York, stars visible in patches between passing clouds. Somewhere in that vastness, the Phantom Zone continued its timeless existence, now containing Zod and perhaps the other Kryptonian soldiers. Somewhere else, other fragments of Brainiac might still travel between worlds, collecting knowledge. The universe remained full of threats and wonders alike. But here on Earth, the last son of Krypton had found something his birth world had forgotten and his adopted world sometimes struggled to recognize, that strength came not from isolation or domination, but from connection and collaboration. From embracing differences rather than erasing them. From choosing to be both human and Kryptonian, with all the complexity that entailed. It wasn't always an easy path. But looking at the tiny city that represented Krypton's legacy and the human team that represented Earth's potential, Clark Kent, Superman, finally understood that it was the right one. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.